I just took a sip of water? Yeah.
Okay. We are live. Good to go, Teresa.
Okay, I'm going to call to order the December 8th, 2020 work session for the Tipp City Board of Education, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dave, whenever you're ready for roll.
Okay. President Dunaway.
Present.
Vice President Dahl.
Here.
Mrs. Heatherly.
Here.
Mr. Patrick.
Here.
Mrs. Zakor.
Here.
All present and accounted for this evening, Madam President. We have a quorum tonight.
Okay, great. So let's start with the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
I will motion. Is this something?
Do we need a motion?
Can we do this for a
Mr. Stefanovic?
second? Like when we're voting on items?
Do we need
We're
approval?
just approving the setup of the agenda tonight.
Okay.
If anybody wanted to add, well,
Okay,
shouldn't add anything.
so I have a motion from Corinne. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second by Mrs. Dahl and Mrs. Heatherly. Ready for a vote, Dave?
Dahl,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
Okay, great. So that takes us to discussion items, which our first discussion item is the library trustee discussion. So Mr. Stefanovic, do you want to start?
Sure. The last work session or last meeting, we had a conversation about the library policy and where ORC 3515 fits in with a board policy regarding the seating of library trustees. We presented a template that Neola had, and it was from or provided to a district not in this region of the state, and our Neola representative didn't even have access to that template, and so we got it from another part of the state. Recently, I think it was yesterday, I received another template from Shaker Heights, and Shaker Heights is a suburb of Cleveland, and they have an actual policy in their board docs. So today, if you haven't checked email, I put the two templates together. They're quite similar. Matter of fact, the template from Shaker Heights, I believe it has a listing of qualifications, if you
Yeah,
will,
it was
criteria.
identical. It was identical.
And I believe that almost mirrors some of the documentation from the library that they said they put in some of their postings. And so I don't know if that's a template language from the state level, but I had seen that in one of the communiques from the library. You should have received several emails, some from library board members, some from a library director forwarded through me, and then those two templates. So you have background information to use in the discussion of the pending board policy.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, so really what we need to decide tonight is between the two policies. We have the Neola example, which we all saw at the last meeting, and the one that we all received today, which was the Shaker Heights. Does anybody have any comments for discussion?
Which ones did the library send? I'm just trying to look for those.
Which library, the Tipp City Library?
Did they send us an example or no?
No,
Oh,
we just have the one from Neola and the one from Shaker Heights.
I'm not able
sorry,
to
Sam.
access the one from Shaker Heights.
You have, if you're logged into Board Docs, it will not work. Let me provide a
I have a
copy.
Yeah,
I have a copy. Do I,
Okay, you have an extra copy from,
not an extra, but do you need this to make copies?
I've got one.
Okay.
Copy.
We found that out this afternoon when Dave was logged into our board docs. It locks you out of the other board docs. I don't know why. Board docs is board docs, so you should be able to access the public side of all the board docs, but you have to sign out of ours and then you can access the link. But he's got a paper copy, so he'll bring it.
Well, while we're waiting, just real quick, maybe for clarification purposes, how this all got started was I received an email from the library, let me get my notes here, on September 23rd. When I received that email on September 23rd, I sent it to the entire school board. I wasn't aware of the process of the board members going to the trustee meetings. I didn't have any emails. I checked my emails. I checked board meetings. I came up with nothing. So at that point, myself, Corinne, Mr. Stevens, and Mr. Stefanovic reached out to legal counsel because this was my first time having anything to do with this. So luckily, Joellen, you were the board member who was at the library trustee appointments 2019 and 2020. So I guess, how did you get notified?
I don't recall how I got notified as far as 19, but I do remember asking, I think Sam or Andy, is this something I can do? And they said, anybody can go do it from the board, just they give you a card, you go and you read it, and I did that. And I think I volunteered that information last meeting, but we didn't really get into the details of it. And I sort of thought that's what we were going to come out with tonight, is a procedure to sort of iron out that kind of detail. I think in 19, when I was asked, I was in the library. And I think we were still organizing, because I remember there in January, I mean, January of this past year, we hadn't even organized ourselves yet. So, yeah, I just went and did it again. There's no.
So that library trustee appointment, just call it the library trustee appointment that you attended in January of 2020 was prior to our organizational meeting where Simon would have been a new board member and Ann would have been a new board member?
I don't know the exact.
Okay.
But it fell during that time period. So there's no agenda to not disclose that. I didn't know, because I didn't know in 19 when they asked me to come do it. I don't know if it was a situation where, I don't know how the notification works, to be honest. I don't know how they select it. I think that'd be sort of a question for them as to what is the process? And I think that's sort of what tonight is about, which is how do you address that kind of process? That's what, to me, a procedure is.
And I think that that's part of the misunderstanding between the community and us, and between the library and us. They thought because you were swearing people in, that us as a collective board knew that we were swearing in library members. And so when we said,
Who's that?
I'm assuming the library assumes, because you went as a representative of the school board, they assumed because you were there, we all knew that you were swearing in library members. But I didn't know you were doing that. I can't speak for anybody else.
Yes,
And so then when we received that email about, we need you to approve an appointment, I was going, well, we don't do this. This isn't our job. Hence asking the lawyer, is this our job? Hence being here where the library thinks now we're intruding. And this is not at all an intrusion in my mind. It's us going, we forgot to do our jobs. You didn't ever tell us that you were down there swearing people in. So they have the impression that the school board knows. You knew that you were swearing people in. We didn't know.
I don't know what they knew. I
You
don't
didn't
know.
know that they knew that you were
They
down there
asked-
swearing people in?
They asked me to come and do it. So.
Right, so they think that the school board knows because
I
you're
don't
there.
know that they make that assumption, Corinne. I don't know that they
They-
assume I don't know that they know that I didn't come back and tell you all this.
well, you were vice president last year.
Yes.
So one of the things that you said to myself and Corinne was you hate coming to these meetings and feeling blindsided and that you're always in the dark. And I said to you, I understand where you're coming from because I always felt that way for 4 years. So on September 23rd, one thing I did was I forwarded that email to all of you because I didn't know the process. I've been on the board 5 years now. The other concern I have is something that Simon is very passionate about, and that's our board meeting minutes. So I went through our meeting minutes for January, and there's nothing in our meeting minutes for the last 5 years that says, Vice President Joelle and Heather Lee swore in,
It's not in
the person's name. So it's not in our Tipp City Board of Education minutes. So to me, once again, the 5 members at this board, one of our things we've been very good at this year is trying very hard to be transparent. So I don't know how I missed this for 5 years, not knowing that we did this.
If I may, I think the purpose
Absolutely.
of this work session here today is to define a policy. There's obviously a lack of institutional memory with this school board as to what the process is related to library board trustees. That's fair. So we have to have a policy. And I think rather than trying to figure out what we don't know and why, which I think is an impossible errand, which will take a lot of time, I would suggest that we just focus on the actual language of the policy we wish to put in place related to our fiduciary obligation to appoint the trustee.
Well, that kind of surprises me, Simon, because you have repeatedly said that no individual board member acts alone. And this is exactly what happened from my perspective, what I'm seeing. You have also questioned the meeting minutes. So I think there's a lot of interconnectivity here and relevance for this discussion. Because
What does that mean, question the meeting minutes?
when Simon was questioning maybe a meeting or two ago whether our meeting minutes were adequate, Mr. Stevens said they were. Mr. Patry said he wanted another opinion on that. He asked for the attorney to weigh in on that. This full board gave that approval. We spent that money. The attorney gave an opinion that yes, the meeting minutes are satisfactory to what Mr. Stevens doing. So that's what that means.
Okay.
My concern here is, this is my first year. This library issue lands in our lap around the fall. And I was really shocked to see that a board member on our board this year in 2020 went down and did an officiating act without the knowledge of this board. I'm disturbed for a lot of reasons. It's not even in our meeting minutes.
Where would it go in the meeting minutes, Ann?
January or January, personally, I think it should go moving forward. Sorry, I don't want to
Well,
interrupt.
if I may, I think it should maybe proceed after the appointment's made. So we
I
don't
didn't
have
make
any
the appointment. The appointment,
Joelle,
looking back through the minutes
if I may
of
finish.
the board,
If
was a vote
I may
that would
finish.
come before the
If
board.
I may finish.
I wasn't acting.
There
on
was
behalf
no
of-
2020 meeting minutes on an appointment. You were here. We were all part of this 2020 board. Yet, even though there's no meeting, even though there was no process of an appointment, somehow you unilaterally went down to the library without the knowledge of myself. Did anybody else know this?
No.
Mr. Patry, did you know this?
I'm not participating
Okay.
in this ridiculous exercise.
Well, it's not ridiculous.
Joellen indicated earlier,
I'm not
Joellen
finished. I
indicated.
haven't given up the floor yet. So without the knowledge of the board, going down and participating in an officiating ceremony, swearing somebody in that hasn't even been appointed by this board, and then the library, the pieces fit a little bit better together from their understanding their perspective. Now that we've learned you swore someone in 2020 and you did it last year, and there's nothing in the meeting minutes for 2018, 19, or 20. And I'm wondering, even from an Open Meetings Act perspective, if that puts us in some jeopardy. There's no journalization that this ever happened, which is why we got sort of involved with this. and probably crossed some wires somewhat, because you knew you did it, but we didn't know you did it.
I shared at the last meeting I did it. There's been no agenda to
You
not
shared it
withhold
at the
that.
last meeting after Mrs. Santucci said, well, somebody came down and I believe,
I believe Teresa, I don't think
Said
Teresa was
really?
at the last meeting. It was Teresa who asked who did the swearing in. I don't know when it was. My point is, this is what I thought we were here together to work out with the library trustees, what these processes will be. And there was no board in January till the board organized. And I would question if there's any meeting minutes that ever showed any board member going down and swearing in, because
Well,
what
there
is in
were
the minutes and
appointments.
what's supposed to be in the minutes
in the minutes,
is that this board approves the name that they
in
send
the
us.
minutes, if you remember the letter that we received, in fact, there was minutes designating appointments up through 2017. And then 2018, 19, and now 20, there isn't anything in the minutes. So there was a process there. And I guess the main question I have, Joellen, is how did you feel so entitled to go down there and do that?
I didn't feel entitled. I asked Sam and Andy,
No,
Is
in
this something
2020, Sam and Andy weren't here in
we weren't
2020.
even organized as a board at the beginning of the year, Ann.
So why did you feel entitled to go down and do that?
I didn't feel entitled. I felt like someone asked me to do it. I said, yes, I'll go do it. I didn't share this with you all because we weren't even organized yet as a board. There's no agenda to withhold anything.
The only thing that's occurred here and what was said earlier and very clearly, and I know you're very concerned, and I know you want to put Joellen on a hot seat that I don't think she belongs. Joellen indicated that she was asked about the library board to swear in the new member. She asked Sam Spanner or Andrew Venners at some time before we were organized, is that something she should be doing? They indicated that that was fine. One of them did. And so she did it. She didn't know that that's not something that was related to the appointment. Now we know that after you guys engaged the attorneys. We know that's the process now. Joellen did not know that that was a process at the time. So now we can go back and try to characterize her actions as, instead of just, forgive my term, ignorance of not knowing that that was an official act, okay, as some type of demonized act of intrusion on this board's power, or we can say, hey, we didn't have a policy on this. We lacked institutional memory. Why don't we now come together instead of going back and trying to characterize people as having breached some trust and just put it in, please. That's all we need to do.
So I like the Shaker Heights model because it really lists out qualities that we're looking for. And it seems kind of wordy, the whole giant thing, but I like the 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. I mean,
Yeah, I did too.
and I like that it says, what's the library board's responsibility?
Mhm.
And I think that was really, really close to what the library, I don't know if the library sent us, or maybe I just looked it up on the
No, they
library
didn't
board.
send us anything.
They didn't send us anything, okay. So,
I didn't mean to interrupt. Shouldn't we like invite them in so we start
We
having
need to
this
have our own
discussion?
conversation as a
Board meeting.
board. This is a board work session. I want us to kind of be on the same page since we just received this document today. We don't want the overlapping argument, we want to keep the meeting.
Well, I don't want to argue that either.
Right.
My point is, they're a resource to engage to come up with the
And they
answer.
could have invited us to their meeting last Monday and they wanted their time as a board to discuss things, just like we need our time.
no,
Excuse me, just point of order.
no, point of order.
This is
Ms.
an
Dunway,
open
please
meeting,
ask
is that
them.
correct?
No,
Open meeting.
I'm
no,
sorry?
I'm sorry, but I feel really.
Sunshine
threatened with the
law
way
is
you're
not an
banging on
open
that
meeting?
door.
Yeah.
I feel very
We like to have the
threatened,
doors
Mr.
open,
Dunway.
is all
We're
we're
on
asking.
the internet,
No,
In this law, we like to have the doors open.
no, I
if that's
feel,
okay.
I'm just telling you right now, I do not feel safe.
this is a
Okay.
work, yeah, I agree.
think it might be a violation of law, but. I'll
It's
close the
not,
door.
we have it on the internet. Yeah, we'll invite them in when we have our
May I
discussion.
just interject 1 minute?
This is. Go ahead.
Simon, I very much appreciate the perspective for now. The contradiction here, though, you talk about, well, this is why we're formulating a policy. But when you get up on your platform for certain things, such as not having a policy about who can reach out to the attorney, you emphasize so many times that no one board member can act alone. and I understand Joel's your friend, but that doesn't mean, in my opinion, that you know, you whitewash one thing and you hammer something else when it's not your ally. And I just find that unprofessional.
Well, Joellen's not my friend, respectfully. She's a fellow member of the school board member.
We're all colleagues.
I've never socialized with Joellen. The only interaction I've had with Joellen ever in my entire life has been related to this school. Secondly, I'm not saying that Joellen should be permitted to do anything by herself outside the school board. I'm suggesting we should put a policy in place. And so I'm not sure why we're talking about me right now. That's interesting. I'm just suggesting we get to the policy. You've indicated Shaker Heights.
I
And
have,
so
I have
think
a
that-
question. Yeah, before I forget, because this is very important, Dave Stevens, do you want to, I know that you and Mark have phone calls back and forth with, Helen, and since you reached out to Helen, when Simon brought up the topic of meeting minutes, I think it might be worthwhile to see if we need to put in the December, board meeting minutes or the January board meeting minutes, for the last 3 years, 2017, 18, 19, and 20, because we have nothing in our meeting minutes that, 2017, this was the library trustee that was sworn in, this was the board member that went, just to make sure we're covered.
Are you saying add stuff to previous minutes?
Well, no, if we could do like a blanket thing, I don't think we can go back and put them in January for
No.
17, 18, 19, 20, but we can do one thing saying,
With the dates.
right, kind of like an addendum.
That would just
So that
be,
we're covered?
that would just be in these minutes. It would just
Would
be
be what?
reflected in these minutes.
Oh, that's a good idea too. We could add it tonight.
Well, that was my question. How do you clean up the
Yeah, I just want to
void?
make sure we clean it
The
up.
void of 2018, 2019, and 2020 in terms of there were no appointments. In 2018, I believe it was Mr. Spano that went down there, and so that's what. the
18 was,
library-
17 and 18 was Spano, 19 and 20 was Joellen.
19 and 20,
Correct.
Mrs. Heatherly went down there,
That's
but
right.
I think it's important to note that that was not without a board decision. It was without a board meeting. There was, I don't know how that became the official. Why is that official? That just blows my mind.
Well, what is,
I just
I
wanted-
had the same feeling, man. I'm like, am I supposed to be doing that? Why didn't you ask? I did ask.
did
I
ask.
asked Sam Spano or Andy
Yeah,
Ventures.
and that's where that's another thing we probably have to ask Helen.
Yeah,
Is
I just want to
is
clean
it
it up.
this, yeah, is it this board's responsibility to address things of previous boards?
Right.
And so if the previous boards believe that all they needed was a representative at the library meeting, then they sent a representative down there. And they didn't act on it in the meeting minutes here.
Right.
And whether that was correct or incorrect, she can answer that, but I don't think this board goes back and says, since that board didn't do this, we do this, but you can say, you can act on the appointments, and then put the minutes as part of this meeting or the next meeting.
Right, I just want to clean it up.
And finalize it.
So for the previous 2 years, the fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20 appointments, that's according to ORC, it's outside of our timeline now. We have up to 45 days after the first of the year to appoint a trustee.
The probate court has
The probate court, that is correct. The probate court would now do this. We, as the school district board, or you as the school district board, are to appoint the 2021 representative that would be brought to us either this December or in January. We have 45 days after the first to appoint that person. So the previous two, that's out of our control now. Now we're just trying to discuss the policy and the procedures on what we do in the future.
And I think just to move us forward, like we should decide which one of these
Yes.
we like to lean towards,
Mhm.
and then welcome in whichever trustees brought down,
absolutely. share
with them which one we like, and then get their feedback and move forward on which one we'd like to.
I guess my view is, before I indicate things I might like or dislike about these two policies, I'd be interested in having all the information first. And so I think inviting them, we did invite them to the school board meeting. And so I think we should invite them before, get their input prior to discussing what may or may not work. Because we don't have all the information yet. And so until we have all the information, at least for me, it'd be difficult
What,
to indicate where I'm going.
I'm just playing this out in my head. I'm just thinking of the way to move this forward. The easiest, I was thinking if we could build some kind of consensus about qualities or criteria that we thought were valuable to us as a board, and then layer and fold in on top of that the attributes that they like to keep or maintain, then we can meld it. If we don't at least have some kind of understanding here,
Right.
and we just throw in additional information, it might get too much in the mix.
And additional voices, I think it's
Yeah.
a good starting point.
Just from that outburst,
Yes.
I don't know what the climate is out there, if we can have some little bit of a building block
Okay.
to build upon.
Well, the Shaker Heights one, if you look at like the A through J, that was, I did see a lot of that same wording on the library, on what they look for, so that's good, yeah, that's common ground.
Mhm.
So I did like that. It's, library board 3, A through J.
I guess I would wonder, if they already have a process of how they, what they're looking for, why wouldn't our language just sort of mirror their language?
It actually does. What I read on A through J matches what I read on their, they updated theirs on November 19th or November 20th, November 19th. Yeah, selection of board members, policy number 1, November 19th, 2020. Did you get a copy of that?
It's on there.
It's on there, yeah, it's on their page.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, I think we'll probably come up with similar language, I mean, qualities of, investment in the library and honest, and, I'm sure we can come up with those qualities. I have a feeling that, I don't wanna have that responsibility of placing their trustees. That's why I have tried to, whether you think it's arguing or whatever, I have tried to say, there has been a process in place that the school board, what I see is that we just approve the name that comes.
So you
look
like
back through
the
the
Tipp
minutes.
City Library Board one?
I don't know that I looked at the Shaker Heights ones earlier. And
I mean, the Tipp City, because we're just trying to figure out which language we like. So the Tipp City Library one is not unlike the Shaker Heights one. And it says that so the first thing it says is what the library board's gonna do. And the first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna notify the president of the Board of Education 2 months in advance. And then the library is gonna suggest the names of candidates who would be valuable trustees. And then it lists like some qualities, which is very, very similar to what the library board has. And they're the ones that are gonna suggest those names, and these candidates would have indicated their willingness to serve and agreed to send the resume to the president and the Board of Education. And then it lists what the library is gonna look for, a lot of great things. And then at the very bottom, what the board is gonna do is, it puts on us the responsibility of publicizing the vacancy in the local media, including information about the length of term and the time frame set for the selection process. Like, please submit your application to the library by September 1st, or whatever we think. And then there's going to be 2 representatives from the Board of Education designated by the president and the president of the library board or their designee. And they're going to review the applications. They're going to interview the candidates, and then they announce the appointment to the public, and then we would ratify it. Now, if you are saying that you would like more library board,
I'm just, what I've said to this point is.
well, I'm saying we can easily put that down here.
No, I'm.
Right, we get it, there's a process going on.
I get that.
Okay, so let's talk about our
If you wanna
process.
iron out the details, and
Right.
in that case, the way you're reading that, the details are that we're going to select.
No,
Select and approve are 2 different things.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's
so
sort of like the
do you-
contention.
do you want
here.
to change those words?
Yeah,
We
so
can change
for-
those words.
Shaker Heights, they actually appoint.
They review and interview candidates.
Yeah.
Been review and interview.
Yeah, and
Correct.
it's 2 board members and then 1 library board member. So
2
we could
Board of
actually
Education.
flip-flop that.
And 2 library.
We could say 1 board of education and 2 library boards. I mean,
I guess the way I feel about this is that for 70-something or more years, this process, which is not in the policy, but that's been occurring, has been driven solely by the library board of trustees, the interview process and everything else, and it's worked very well. We have a lot that we need to do as a Board of Education. I feel that having them provide to us a list of 3 names for us to select who to appoint, and them doing all the heavy lifting would make sense to me, rather than us having to break down into committees and actually take time to interview and everything else. They've got 7 Board of Trustees. They've got an open enrollment for applications all year long, at least right now, seems like. So I'm not opposed to kind of this concept, except where I would modify Shaker Heights policy is every instance where we're actually doing interviewing and reviewing of resumes. I think the library board of trustees is more than capable of providing us a list of the candidates that we can decide from versus us having to do all the heavy lifting.
Simon, in your example, like you said, it's been working for nearly 100 years right now. How do you feel about the rolling over of seats?
To me, the rolling over of seats is kind of a description that implies that there's some type of ability to roll over a seat. I think that having members with multiple terms is kind of equivalent to just serving on the school board more than 1 term. In that you don't roll over, you're just another, at the end of your 7-year term, you're another person to be decided again, just like you were the last time.
I understand what you're saying. What, I guess the part of that my biggest concern is, if Corinne said, 2 months before the school board election, I'm gonna run again. And then we, as 5 people, say, okay, Corinne, 4 more years. We never open that up to the community. So one thing that I would like to see is, if somebody's library term is up at the end of 7 years, which that's a very long term, so we want to thank them for that commitment and they don't get paid. But at the end of that 7 years, I think it should be open. Like, I shouldn't be able to say, I'm going to be on school board for 20 years.
Yeah, sure, but it's been open all year long, and I believe the person that quote unquote was rolling over is the only person that applied.
Well, I think
Please shut the
sometimes.
door.
is everything okay in here?
Yes,
Yes, they'll need us.
I don't think so.
We were called here.
You were.
We were.
Thank
If you guys are good, we'll get out of your meeting.
We're good.
We're good.
Thank you. Thank you
Don't
so
know
much.
who called.
So I think,
sorry, Rebecca.
in this instance, the quote unquote rollover was the only person I think that applied. And so if you only have 1 candidate that's willing to serve on the board of trustees, I guess those who show up rule the world type of scenario. But if you had multiple people, I think that the policy should not automatically allow someone to roll over. So I think your question was, should we allow for automatic rollovers from term to term?
Right,
My feeling is no.
thank you.
The library board should provide us more than 1 candidate. And if they have a recommendation either way, they can certainly say, hey, this board member's been very, very helpful for 7 years. They've done this, that, and the other. The other 2 members are also equally qualified, and you guys decide. But I think that they should be driving the slate of candidates that we're reviewing.
So if I could-
assumption that happened?
Yeah, so yeah, they have rolled,
Should we ask them though?
well, I'm gonna tell you because they already told me, they sent us an email. So they did roll over the last 2 trustee spots. So as a board, we need to decide what we're gonna do about that, because that wasn't a fair and equal process. It wasn't opened up. And then with this,
Wasn't it?
It was open year-round. Applications could be submitted year-round.
that's, okay, did you attend their Zoom meeting last Monday?
No, I did not.
Okay, and I'm glad I did, because I, thought the same thing that you thought. So at that meeting, it was brought to the attention that somebody did want to run for the seat that is expiring December 31st. And then one of the trustees said, well, we are already rolling over that seat, so have them apply next July.
Who was that individual?
I don't know, they didn't have faces the way the camera was set up, so I couldn't see.
So we don't know who was wanting to run.
The trustee who announced that never gave the name. But so they said, we have somebody that wants to run, and then one of the other trustees said, we're rolling over the seat, so have them apply, I think he said in June or July.
Plus,
I just like, at the end of 7 years, it needs to be in the newspaper.
Yes.
The people in Tipp City need to know
Yes.
that there is a public library board of trustees spot open, and anyone can apply for it, just like anybody can run for school board. So I don't like the rolling over with nobody having equal access to being able to volunteer, that's all.
So let's do the bottom, if we have this consensus that the board will, the Board of Education will publicize the vacancy in the local media, including information about the length of term and the time frame set for the application. So please have all your applications to the board timestamped by
Whatever, such and such, yeah.
September 30th. And then, and I don't know how you guys feel, but I personally, I would never volunteer to be on this school board, library board review and selection committee. I mean, I'm tapped out just coming to school board meetings.
Yeah, sure.
Do you guys think future boards would want to be a part of this process? Would anybody here be interested? Because this could be 2 or 3 days. I mean, I don't know how long it would take to interview.
Well, they're not
people.
getting applicants, right? Because if
Well,
you're rolling, go ahead, if you're
well,
rolling.
you're not advertising either. I
Right.
think this is
Hasn't been-
That's what I'm just saying.
Conversation.
I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
Is there a big interest? Do you think school boards in the future would want to be involved in this?
We should put it on the January organizational meeting and see if there's board members that volunteer, just like we do our Tipp Monroe, all the, the athletic boosters, all of our little subcommittees, this should be one.
Well, but this says appoint 2.
Yes.
I'm just saying, do we even agree with that? Or are we just saying, don't worry about it? We'll take
We can
on
try to get to it.
collecting and we will take on publicizing the time frame and holding them to that. But they're going to then, where it says library board, look for these qualities and they interview. They can do that. They can then send us a name. If they have a tie, they can send us 2 and say, you guys, you're the tiebreaker.
Mhm.
And then that's where then we appoint that person that they send to us. And so we're the publicizer, we're the time frame holder. It's our responsibility to do that. It's their responsibility to conduct the interview, look for those qualities that they see fit, and then send us somebody. And we can have on there that, somebody from the school board could be a part of that policy, that selection. I don't know,
So
I'm
if
just trying to find a good middle ground.
If I understand what you're saying, Corinne, is you're saying the Board of Education is responsible for the publication, advertising, provided applications, collecting those applications within a certain time period.
Mhm.
We then hand that stack of paper over to the library board of trustees.
Mhm.
Let them go through it, let them interview, let them go through their characteristics, and then let them bring back to us the candidate that they've selected, and then we appoint them.
Right.
That is perfect.
And then if somebody so let's say it's my seat, I'm the library board member, I've served for 7 years. If I'm interested, I submit my application up
Yes,
here.
that's the part that's missing.
Right, and so that does away with the idea that somebody can automatically keep a seat, because now you have gone through the same process as everybody else.
I like that too. I would just add though that
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
under publicizes the vacancy,
Yes, ma'am.
I think it should be a joint effort between Board of Education and the library.
Oh, yeah,
They reach out to
absolutely.
their avenues,
You
we'll reach out to ours.
absolutely, you can have, the applicants
Why don't we just
sent
add,
to just one place, but I think there should be joint effort in that recruitment.
well, we could add that to the library section.
Well, you could have library-specific
Right.
functions, Board of Education-specific functions, and joint functions.
Yeah,
So
under library board, we could just add that.
Yeah, and then, but like Simon's saying, joint function, so they don't go, well, we thought you were gonna do it.
Right.
Or, and in the
Right.
future, there won't be a tug of war. We're both gonna do it, we're gonna capture the most amount, we're gonna
Right,
cast our nets wide.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Because that's been my frustration in learning
Yes.
about this. And I asked for the prior advertisements, solicitations, and it wasn't, it's not like somebody gave me a copy of a newspaper article. For example, We just saw this in our own paper. December 2nd, Tipp City looking for residents to serve on board. Members are appointed by city council, and there's the positions. I'd like to, that would, to me, is a given whenever you have a term coming up.
Are you suggesting that the library hasn't been doing that?
Well, I'm not suggesting anything. I requested any copies of, newspaper articles, any copies of social media, anything sent to this board, which is all part of their policy, and there wasn't. I didn't find anything other than they didn't send me, I think you were copied on that.
Or what? I
So
guess-
what did you see that I missed?
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if it hasn't not been showing up in the newspaper. I would assume that costs money.
I haven't seen anything, John, if it,
But I have seen it posted at the library.
yes.
I would say that's what
On the
the
social
last
media.
email said posted.
But
on
John,
the
that's
website.
like saying we need a teacher for our district. We don't go on the consortium. We just put a notice here in our front lobby and said, well, we posted.
So
it
I
on
think
our
we all
lobby.
agree that we need to advertise, so let's, right?
Yeah, and I think that, we can both agree that we need one collection place for all the forms.
Yes.
Which I think needs to be the Board of Education.
Board of
yes.
Education office. And the other thing we need to decide on too is what's the curative action for the prior to rollover seats.
I thought so.
Probate court.
That's how I feel,
Well,
probate court,
Well,
that's
yeah,
exactly.
we check
Yep.
with the probate court
That's
and
why.
see if they want to provide any kind of waiver. for
Right,
that.
and
And
I think it's as simple as the library filing a motion with the probate court to appoint 2 board members. I don't think it's even part of what we should be touching. And then they could ask the court to do it, or just provide notification of the court to do it, and the court's gonna probably take it from there as
But do we advertise? I wonder, do we advertise?
No, it's
Because-
out of our hands.
It's
now
not anything
probate
to do with
court.
us.
Gotcha, okay, so the
Yeah.
court, how do they get their names and stuff?
No.
That's why Mr. Patrick stated the library will reach out to the probate court.
Oh,
Instead of the library sending the stuff here, the library would send the stuff to the probate.
gotcha,
So if I was a citizen and I'm thinking about
right.
going to this position that I read in the paper or
Mhm.
wherever I read it. I mean, it just sounds like it is. If we're not stationed here accepting these, that means somebody here is gonna be accepting these and add this task of then getting them down to, I don't know if they're electronically submitted, if they're gonna be paper. Why wouldn't they just take them to the library?
It's a part of holding us accountable
Yeah.
for our duties and a part of this balance, I think.
Well,
And
the nice thing too is, it makes it hard to lose the institutional memory if you're collecting the applications. Because now there's something physically coming to your,
the task.
to tap, like, oh, because it was nice that we didn't, I'm with you, it'd be nice that we don't have to collect those, that we don't have to advertise it, that the library does everything. The problem with that, and hopefully the policy fixes this, but is that if we're not involved in any of the process other than the appointment, if nobody brings that to our attention or does any of those steps, it kind of, so here, and I think that might make it nice for the board of trustees, the libraries, that we're gonna collect all the information, we're advertising it, and we're gonna forward it on. And I think though, we should also say they're welcome to accept applications as well. That way, if they get applications, because I mean, what's the harm in them receiving applications?
Just as like, a teacher, when you have 2 places to turn stuff in, then you have the argument, they're gonna say, oh, well, I sent it here, but it didn't get there, didn't, you know. it
Not
just-
dual submission, but submission at either or, the library or the Board of Education.
I just think it makes it easier to keep it in one spot.
I think for people applying, it might make it easier to do it both. And I think that when we have only one person applying, for example, for 1 year, the easier you make it for access, the more you'll get as far as candidates.
And that could be, then how about we do this?
Well, we're a
They
small
can collect
community,
them in
there's,
both
it's only 2
places.
blocks.
We set a timeline here so that, when, let's say it's December or September 30th, all of them have to be submitted. And then they're all brought here and somebody checks them all off, and now we have 30 applicants and we turn them all in because they're all, it just kind of puts, an end point, an end thing that happens on the
And it's
30th.
accountability, it's
Right.
accountability, we just want accountability,
On the
yeah.
30th, all applications that have been collected from both spots have been I don't know.
Yeah, we just have like a list, we had 30
I think,
on
Submitted
September
for
30th.
review.
Yeah.
I think when you open it up for 2 spots,
I like one spot.
you're
It should
opening
just
it
be the
up
Board of
for the
Education.
complications.
It
Yeah,
does.
Board of Education.
You know,
Simple.
but that's okay. I mean,
Well, here, and I'll just say this, is that when you have 2 spots, we're always talking about favoritism and things not going through and things like that. When you have 2 spots, if someone feels they're gonna be discriminated against or their application is gonna get tossed in the garbage, it prevents a safety net for their, I'm not saying that that's true.
right.
I think that's a perception that's not true. But if it provides people a feeling of transparency and the ability that their application is gonna be noted, I think that's nice.
And the
So,
hours. The
Mhm.
library's open, I think, on Saturday and Sunday.
yeah,
So that, not Sunday,
Well,
but so you
Saturday.
have that Saturday that it's open, if it's the summer. A lot of kids are downtown or whatever, so, yeah, but then we can just say that they're all going to be compiled and formalized here, and then all
send
those
back
are-
to them, yeah.
And then, do we want, this is the one thing that I didn't really
What did you
understand.
conclude? I 1 spot, 2 spots?
I think we've concluded that we're gonna open it up to 2 spots, however, by whatever date we determine, they need to be certified by, the admin secretary, whatever, or the superintendent signs off. These are all the ones that we have officially collected from both locations and submitted for this library appointment board.
Just to make it simple, are you okay with 2 spots?
I'm willing to collect.
Are you
them on
okay with
this.
2 spots,
I just
Llewellyn?
feel 1
I feel
spot
like we
is
should ask
better.
them, they're sitting on
Is
there
better.
waiting.
We will, Joanne, but
Yeah,
we're
we
trying to
will.
find
Yeah,
consensus
but
here, and then we're gonna fold them in on top of this.
If that's the way that you all think it should go, I think it's fine. I
Okay,
just think
So
that
the
if I
other-
want to be a library trustee, I would go to the library.
and that's why some people might wanna turn it in
I
here,
can
and I
talk
think
to
it
people
does,
at the library about what is it to be a library trustee.
and they can
I'm
certainly
not
do
gonna
that.
ask your call. I
And
mean, she
that's
might
fine.
say, I'd like to help you, but I can connect you to the library.
Well, just to turn in the application, we're just saying,
If
it's
it's
just
a
turning in the
drop-off
application.
point, it just
and,
adds another task,
you know-
someone here to take care of, because we're not here doing that.
Right, in Ohio, Ohio Revised Code 3375.15, we've all kind of, this thing just, popped up before us, so we're just taking corrective action, to move forward and kind of find a common ground. So of course, they can absolutely positively go to the library, absolutely.
And then the other thing is, do we want to, I can't imagine any of us having time to do this, but I don't wanna preclude future boards
Exactly, that's
that
the
want.
thing.
So maybe we can say no more than.
What number you want,
at-
3?
at 3, no
Okay.
more than 2 Board of Education members would ever be involved in the process at any time.
I-
And then,
I don't think we should be involved in any of it.
any of it,
I don't think we have any understanding of what the library board of trustees needs to understand to manage that library. For us to interview and try to somehow guide that process when we don't really understand what they're doing there makes no sense to me. I understand that from a fiscal standpoint, statutorily, they fall underneath us and we need to appoint them. I think that they have 7 boards of trustees who understand the library, they understand the library's needs. And I trust them to make a good decision. It's worked for decades. And so I don't think that we have any time to provide, nor should we, because we're not gonna know the information. That's my personal feeling.
I'd like to just comment, it may have worked for decades, but it did not work the past 3 years. I think we need to land on something that started all of this. We just weren't sitting around idle and bored and decided to create this issue. This issue created itself through improper procedures. My next question would be, Simon, to you, when you say you don't think we should be involved with the interviewing. And I'm not sure either how I feel about that, but I'm wondering, because Shaker Heights is a really nice area. We have a friend up there, college roommate. And why do you suppose they put that on there? Appoints 2 representatives of the board.
I
For their-
can't
I
speak,
mean, when you say, if I may, you said, well, Board of Education members don't know how to run a library, and I would think that, but obviously they have a policy, and I'm wondering what they what value and benefit do they feel in having that there? Because evidently, yeah, they're a big district, twice our size, and so they've got busy things to do and.
Well, I can't speak for Shaker Heights, but to answer your question, I feel that it's worked in Tipp City. And so for speaking for Tipp City, I'd say that our library board has done a great job. Where we failed is that the Board of Education has failed to recognize the process. There's a lack of institutional knowledge and memory, and we did not formally appoint the people that were selected by the library board. The management of the library board, in my opinion, in Tipp City has been phenomenal. And so I have no interest in involving the Board of Education in selecting the future trustees. I think they've done a good job of that themselves. Why Shaker Heights does it this way, I have no clue.
Yeah, I wonder what they feel is the benefit.
All I can say is that it doesn't seem like we need to change anything in Tipp City because it's been working fine.
And I'd like to add, is a lack of procedures. That you say it was improper procedures. We don't have procedures. That's what this is supposed to be
I'm
about.
talking about improper procedure in the fact that the law was clear that when the first term expires, you just don't automatically roll over to an assumed appointment, or there needs to be an appointment at the beginning of each and every term, whether it's your first term or it's your second term. And the improper procedure I'm referring to, Joellen, is that the trustee that finished a first term
I wish they would ask us what happened.
wanted to go to a second term, wanted to go to a second term without an appointment.
I don't want them in here, they're angry.
Without an appointment, and then the other improper procedure was swearing somebody in who wasn't even appointed. So that's what I refer to as improper procedure.
And when we say the BOE failed in procedure, not this BOE, because we're trying to clean it up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how all this got started, is the five of us said, wait a minute, what's going on? Let's peel back the onion here. So, you know.
Right, but I think some of the hostility that we're sensing is because we could have just come together and talked this out.
Yeah, we could have gone to them last Monday, right? I mean, the library's a lot bigger. There's more meeting spaces. We could have gone there last Monday. That would have been a great idea.
But to Teresa's point too, I mean,
Hold this meeting with them?
Well, they had a meeting last Monday. They could have invited us, right? Because they have a bigger space, more social distancing.
I don't believe
Okay,
it's all.
It's not about right.
Well, I can we stay focused on the, yes, so let's talk about the policy, let's stop talking about the past, and let's move forward.
I agree.
Yeah,
So
and so
the
one,
policy I think that we've agreed on is, oh, sorry.
he's been
go ahead.
trying to jump in.
Well, I was just gonna jump to the question about Shaker Heights. I don't know, they used to be a rival of ours when I was in high school back in the day, but that has nothing to do with the policy. But it's not that far of a revision off of the Neola template. The Neola template that was sent to us actually said that if the board wanted to be involved in the process, they could send one or two members to the interview process. And I think that goes back to what Simon was saying, that institutional knowledge or institutional memory, it just puts somebody in that process so you know that what the process is about, what it's like, and it's actually, occurring. And so you would sit in and see what a library trustee interview looks like. And so you'd be,
So
here's what I like.
and
Okay,
then to Corinne, you can't have three. You can only have two as a max.
right,
Otherwise, it
right.
counts as a board meeting.
right.
So you can.
So to your original question, Corinne, appoints two representatives of the Board of Election to be on that interview process. What I like about that is, think about this. If you're a community member and you've lived in Tipp City 2 years, and you're like, I was on the Board of Trustees in Tampa, Florida. This is something I'm very passionate about. I'm a retired, whatever. And I've been doing this for 14 years in Florida. But you know that the library, you pull up the library trustees, it's like, oh my gosh, they've been together for 14 years. That's intimidating. So you have to go interview with 7 people that have effectively been together 7 to 14 years. I know just from being in positions like that, you kind of, like, to Simon's original point of friendship versus colleagues, you get to know people, you kind of get a vibe. That would be super intimidating. So the one thing I like about having 2 Board of Education members in that interview process is it's less intimidating for a person to go into that environment and feel like they're gonna get like a fair chance.
So why don't we put, just because I hate to handcuff
Right.
future boards as well.
Yeah, I like it.
Why
I
don't
like
we
number
put
3.
may appoint 2 representatives from the Board of Education?
And we can work it out, and we can work it out in
then-
January, and it will
right.
change every January,
And that's
depending
up
on
to
the 5 people
those
that sit in
boards
these seats.
from here forward.
Yeah, but I don't want to preclude future boards.
So, yeah.
So
Where
would you
put that, Corinne?
on number 3, it says
Could be
may appoint to,
instead of will or can.
or may appoint, yeah,
But there's a difference between participating
yeah.
and making decisions. And I think that appointing 2 board representatives to participate in the process, but not necessarily make a decision needs to be clear. Because I think the decision needs to be made by the library board of trustees.
Well, this is how I thought they meant, and I could be wrong. So you have up to 2 people that this board may or may not appoint to be a part of this process, depending on how that board at that time feels.
Right.
And then, I don't know if they do all 7 of the library board trustees sit in on that, or if it's 5 board trustees. They come together and they do their interview and selection process. So it's never, gonna be a situation where I'm just trying to imagine in my head a situation, so you're not gonna get to a gridlock. It's not gonna be like 2 versus 2. And it's definitely going to be, and I could be wrong, but I think it should be more library heavy, like at least 4 library people.
Yeah,
And
majority.
no more than 2 school board members appointed at any one time. And they're listening to the process, they're selecting those people to then appoint that, to then send that appointment back to the school board.
I think that assumption that you just illustrated, I don't know that that happens or doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
Because I
ahead.
don't know that we even know how do they interview with all 7 or 4 or whatever. I mean, that's my point, we just ask them.
We will. Oh, we definitely
I mean,
will.
we're already, I understand what you're saying about coming to consensus, but it's like we're coming up with the answer before we've even invited them to be part of the process.
I don't think it's coming up with an answer. I think
No,
it's
we're-
exploration of ideas, and I appreciate this opportunity with my board, Joelle.
I do think we need more information. But
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
And I
think-
We will get that.
It's
Well,
just that
I
our
just
time
think-
right now,
Well, I typically don't go into a process of picking a policy without having the information I need to pick the policy. That's all I'm saying.
I'll just add, I don't believe that we can have a policy that says what an outside group is going to do. I don't think we can dictate what the library is going to do. But I mean, I'm looking at this policy here and it does state that the library board will do these points and the district board will do these points. We just have to,
well,
Figure
at
it
our
out.
last meeting, I think it was our last meeting, I know one of them, Mr. Stefanovic, I believe you said that the school board has the discretion to direct that process, or was it in our email?
Well, I think when I said that, it was that if the board wanted to undertake the entire process, then you set that up and you can say, this is how it's gonna work. But I think what Dave is saying is once you involve another entity, so if the board has these responsibilities and the library trustees have these responsibilities, I think if you're gonna have something in the board policy, then I think you have to have the identical policy over at the library board of trustees policy, and then it's not either group telling the other group what they're gonna do, it's just a shared idea, and it's in both places.
and then should policy probably should be reviewed by an attorney?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that,
Okay.
I think that this is, I think we have a pretty good understanding of what we're looking for in the
Yeah,
board.
me too.
The
And
only,
and the extent to which we would even want, if we do get involved, what that would look like.
the only thing I would really feel strongly that needs to be revised beyond what we discussed is that the appointment of the library board of trustee member would be made based on the list provided by the library board of trustees. In other words,
Correct.
we
That's
cannot
right.
go rogue.
Totally.
No, I'm agreeing with
All right.
that.
I totally
100%.
agree with that. We just can't pick
Yeah,
some
we're not
random
gonna say
person.
Bob Smith. when
Thank
Bob
you very
Smith-
much for performing this interview process and providing us nominees.
However-
We're picking Bob.
Bob
Right.
Smith,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah, because that just takes, this
This
makes
is
it a
their
paper
process.
report.
Well, and then we want to have,
Yeah.
we want to have a good relationship, and that's not a way to have a good working relationship, like, surprise, it's Bob Smith, no, that's not happening. And then also in here somewhere, I think it needs to say that it needs to be approved at the December board meeting, or, right, so that we're within that 45-day window.
Yeah, so we need to
So,
add that.
yeah,
I'm
like-
just making a list of.
Yeah,
And
so
then-
number, go ahead, Mr. Stefanovic, but number
Historically-
6 should,
I'll say historically up through
yeah,
2017,
December,
it was the December meeting.
yeah, so which, number 6
This
should be,
meeting, this December meeting.
yeah,
To be appointed and voted on
at the December, yeah, because we don't want to miss our 45-day window and have to go probate ever again.
before, the
Well,
last.
those library trustee terms expire at the end of the year, like December 31st, so that needs to be our December board meeting.
Yeah,
Right,
December
to
Board of
meet there,
To be
Education.
yeah.
appointed and voted on by December board meeting.
Yeah. Yep.
The last meeting in December.
So I worked in a board model for almost my entire career, and in preparing agendas, I mean, I would have like a tickler, and that to me is what we as a board should be talking about, is creating that tickler, so when this sort of thing comes up, we know
Yes.
that it's in December it comes up. Or we know, we always talk about, X,
Yeah,
Y, Z.
correct.
In certain months, and that to me is what I thought we would be figuring out.
Yeah.
Because that's our part.
Yeah, sure, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and electronically, that's how Carrie works it. Carrie will pull up, on a board docs, she'll pull up last November's or last October's board agenda, and then we work through and see the stuff that happens every October, every November, and then we build the rest of the agenda around that.
Perfect.
Yes. So,
I think, are we ready for the library people to come in? I think we hit number 4.
so just before they come in, just to make
Yeah,
sure that this is a
recap.
productive,
Yeah.
I think, Teresa, if you could go over with them the kind of consensus that we have come to, and then we'll just fold in, we'll just ask for their feedback. Where do you see problem areas with how we anticipate being partners with you, and then go from there.
Dave, do you have 2 extra copies of the Shaker Heights things that we got? Oh, you're, okay. So do we know which 2 trustees are here or who they sent?
I just want to make sure
Oh,
that
go ahead.
we'll reflect, I think giving this to them may provide them a misconception of where we've ended up.
Yeah.
We've evolved far beyond this.
Yeah, so why don't,
I wouldn't even provide that. I think
we take that
Is it
To
okay
me-
to go over this 1 through 6? That's what I was thinking, the Board of Education 1 through 6 piece? That,
well,
you know what I'm saying? See where it says the Board of Education, since this is what we just spent an hour discussing, 1 through 6?
Well, I don't think we were just discussing 1 through 6. I think we were discussing things in the library board at 1 through 3. We discussed things in Board of Education 1 through 6. Some items in 1 through 6, we agreed needs to be revised. I think it would be better just to maybe when we have our policy, this is kind of a framework, but we've gone away, I think, materially based on what this is meaning to what we're, I think, heading towards. And so I would suspect it'd probably be more productive to just outline the 4 items or 5 items we've kind of agreed upon. I think the first thing is the advertising.
Yeah, publicizing.
Would be joint.
Joint, I agree. Joint
The
publicizing, yep.
application would be collected jointly, but then confirmed at the Board of Education to have an inclusive lift by a certain deadline that obviously we need their input on. Then after that, the library board would break out and do their own process related to interviewing and resumes, et cetera. We would have the ability to, if we so choose, to the president would at least, or the board as a whole, we could discuss that later, to appoint 2 board members to participate in the interview process. And that then the result of that process, the library board of trustees would provide us
Their list,
their list
Correct.
of 1, 2, 3, or
their
whoever.
recommendations.
And then we would appoint from that list alone.
Perfect, yeah, I agree, that's very important to me, that's the most important,
All right.
almost piece.
So
I do think that, and I'm just thinking back to our last meeting and what we said to do. Do we have to have the names of the 2 specific people that we're inviting to join us in this conversation?
Yeah,
Or do we just say, please send in to people. How do we do that motion?
Oh, they're already on, it's already on the agenda, yeah. We just invite them in.
Open the door.
Yeah, we just
I
invite
just
them
wanted
in.
to say one final
Oh,
comment.
go ahead.
And
But it's 2 people, right?
It's two
Yes,
people.
yeah.
Go ahead, Ann.
And I really can swing either way on this, but I'm just gonna try to give one more push for the applicants to have one place only to send in. Because I feel then also it gives you a clear statement of how many people did apply, and it shows you that there was openness, it was communicated well to the community. And I don't know, I like that idea.
I personally like the one spot too, like, I'm not gonna make a big thing about it,
Keep
but
it simple, and I
Yeah,
can swing
I agree.
both ways, but that's my last push for it, so.
I also like that, but I mean, we can kind of iron that out, but I do like,
I think from my perception on the openness side is that having multiple collection points provides that feel of accessibility, and a feeling that, you know, your application is being received and considered. And then the reconciliation process at the end at the Board of Education then provides a solidified, unified list. And in that way, if you're feeling that your application is going to get tossed, if you go to the library, you can take it to the Board of Education. It's recognized there. If our board members are participating, they can ensure that the process has been followed. And then same thing with the library. If you think your application is going to be tossed, if you go to the Board of Education, you drop it off the library, Board of Trustees, and then, or the Executive Director, library, whoever collects it on their end. And that way it provides a feeling of full transparency and openness and accessibility.
So we're talking about what, paper and electronic applications?
Oh, I didn't even think about that, Ann, actually.
I think that's always good,
That's why.
because some people don't have computer or some, you know.
Keeping
And I think a part of that
Inside, because-
reconciliation process would be, if they're emailed in to either place, we print them and we,
Yes,
you know, and
yes.
then it's not gonna be perfect. I do think that I do kind of like that people, I think, would think that you turn in an application to be a library trustee at the library. So I think that we have to acknowledge that for a lot of people seems like the place where you would turn in an application. So I think that we have to have that in our plan.
I understand, Corinne, but I also appreciate Teresa's response because some people haven't really felt they have a chance, that they're going to be receptive. And I'll be honest with you, after everything that's happened in the past, I'm not so sure how comfortable I feel walking down in the library
Yeah,
and walking into the library. I'm not so sure how comfortable I feel right now going out the lobby.
right.
So I'm having sensitivity to people that maybe feel they haven't been truly included into the process.
And I really feel like that's what Simon was saying when he said that he wanted to have both places. So if you didn't feel comfortable coming here, you could go there. If you didn't feel comfortable going there, you could come here.
So to make it simple, Joelle, you're the swing vote. So do you think it's, and we're gonna speak to the library trustees, of course, but do you like one application place or do you like
I'm fine with
join?
it. It's fine.
Okay,
I
so,
think most of it's gonna be electronic and you have to have an email address.
Yeah.
Because increasingly, that's the
We're
mode
gonna go
of
to-
communication these days.
You can have two email addresses. It's not that difficult. I think, you know, and
yeah,
I
sure.
don't think today we need to go down into too much of the specifics of the logistical application process, whether paper or electronic, but I think that deciding collection points is the big thing.
Actually though, because Elaine's expires at the end of this year and then we have that 45-day window, which would put us like February 14th timeframe. So we do sort of, you know what I mean? We don't want to miss that. We don't want to have 3 people having to be referred to the municipal court.
You
So,
could have a policy
Sure.
and then indicate that there's going to be administrative guidelines that provides for the procedure that are discussed and agreed upon by both the superintendent and the library board of trustees or something like that. Mark, does that sound too onerous? I'm sorry, I just threw you some work on you, but.
No,
well, we,
administrative guidelines aren't difficult.
yeah, as long as we have a meeting coming up
So
next Monday.
before we invite two members in. I just want to say the guy who was banging and yelling on the door, I don't feel comfortable inviting him.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm not either. I don't either, and I don't.
Whatever.
Well, to that end though, when I went out there, he was apologetic, and so I think.
But then they yelled again later.
Yeah, I don't feel
I'm
comfortable.
not
comfortable with
Whoever you want to invite in, that's fine. Just please don't invite him.
I think that door kind of is loose because of the way it's secured, and it could have sounded a little bit more than it was intended, but, I think that we invited them here. We tell them to bring two of their people. I don't think we tell who to come in or who not to come in. There's always going to be different levels of comfort when we're having people come talk to us.
Well, we have 3 people saying with that, they're not comfortable with that. I don't even know who that person is, but 3 people just said they're not comfortable with that
It was very
particular.
hostile.
Yeah, I
don't know.
Do you know who it is, Simon?
Last week, someone showed a holster.
Right.
I mean.
Luckily, it was empty. I wasn't here. Oh, I was here that
What
meeting.
I'm trying to make is that people are going to become impassioned, and I think we're going to be just fine. I think we should just let them bring 2 people, and if somebody acts inappropriate, I'll be the first one to stand up and ask them to leave.
Well, you are the closest, you know, you're sitting right there.
Well,
You are the one table
I
over.
don't feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I don't either. Go ahead, Mr. Stefanik.
Well, I was gonna say, that's just like, when we had the gentleman with the holster, I might be naive and stuff like that, but I get up and I will, maintain that there won't be any physical.
Didn't he tell you that you couldn't stop it or something? I remember that comment, like, he said, Mr.
We'll see.
Okay, I kind of remember that.
We'll see.
I feel like I was behind him and I didn't really
Yeah.
see.
So, But yeah, I think there can be a conversation. I don't think anybody's gonna be, dangerous in this meeting. I think it was just a passionate thing that they believed that they were gonna be involved in the entire discussion, and then they thought that they were waiting a touch too long. So I think it would be okay to invite them in.
Well, Simon, you're sitting closest to the door, so let's
2 people.
Yeah, let's invite 2 people in and have them
Well,
introduce
that's all,
themselves.
yeah,
I've
because
never,
of 10, that's all they can.
yeah, I've never met
That's all
anybody,
they
so.
can.
So because of social distancing and the 10 people who we allowed to have 2 people come in, so you have to pick your 2 representatives.
We submitted that already.
We submitted our name.
We submitted it.
They knew it was 2.
Well,
They've known the whole time.
if you wish
Well,
to
that's what they said.
change that,
I didn't hear that.
welcome me, or do you want to keep it the same, that's fine. I think we have to do it because of the governor's orders. Well, that's correct, but that's why everything's in public. That's live.
May I say something first?
Well, hang on, let's let Simon come in. Thank you, if you don't mind. And then we'll do introductions. Hang on, Simon, you might want to, I don't want you to get close to Angie for you one
I'll
time.
go, I'll do my, I'll get to the introductions and I'll go.
But somebody might not actually be right at the table, you might be at the corner, so you guys can do what you're.
I can slide back a little bit.
It's up to you. That's just for your safety.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm Teresa Dunaway. I'm the school board president. I haven't, met either one of you. So thank you for your patience in waiting. We wanted to make sure that we had kind of a group conversation first as a group. It was our first time discussing this Shaker Heights Schools policy. And in the best interest of moving the meeting forward in a timely manner, we wanted to have our own discussion. So thank you for your patience. And if you don't mind introducing yourselves to everybody, that would be wonderful.
I'm Linda Parsons. I'm the president of the library board.
I'm Bill Wendell. I'm the vice president of the library board. I'd also like to say that I apologize for interrupting the meeting earlier. It was not something that should be acceptable, and I apologize for that.
I thank you for that. So hopefully you were able to hear pretty much what.
No.
Oh,
It
okay.
was hard.
I didn't know if you had, if anybody had it on Zoom out there on their phone or anything.
Yeah, but the delay plus the voices.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
It was a mess.
So what we want to do is just kind of bring you up to speed on anything that you couldn't hear or anything that got jumbled with the delay and all that. And please feel free, this is like a two-way dialogue, so feel free to jump in. This isn't just us talking and you know what I mean? We want to, have consensus here. So one thing we did discuss is we thought it would be a great idea moving forward if we jointly publicized these library trustee positions, the applications. However you guys have traditionally done it, we would also, like to help. We have 13 grade bands here. We do a quick news every Monday, so we have access to, a lot of, parents and community members that maybe you don't. So what are your feelings on jointly publicizing the trustee openings?
Well, we can't speak individually for the board.
Yeah, I
obviously,
understand.
but
We understand, absolutely.
I don't think there's anybody who would object to having more people being aware of
Great.
positions being available.
Linda?
I don't think anybody would object to having more publicity.
Okay, great. Well, that was easy. And then how do
Can I
you,
ask a quick question?
oh, jump in. I said this wasn't all my dialogue, so feel free.
Well, then you said that to them.
Oh, okay,
No, I'm
sorry.
just kidding. Do you guys typically get, I mean, to me, 7 years is a long commitment, to be on a board. Do you guys get a lot of
No.
people inquiring about positions or?
It varies from year to year. Some years there was a year we had 14 candidates, we had a large number one year, and then we could have 2 or 3 years in a row where nobody applies. It really.
That's why, I mean, it's a long term and
It's a thankless job.
and when people go for 2 terms, it's 14 years, that's.
Long time.
That's pretty significant.
Right.
So I just wondered if you guys had a lot of people interested in that or not.
It varies.
Lovers of books.
Oh, sorry. So Mrs. Zakor had to step out for a second. So Anne, this is Linda Parsons and Bill Wendell. And this is Ann Zakor.
Bill Wendell?
Yes.
I know.
Okay. So to piggyback on Mr. Stefanic's question, I believe it's Elaine's seat that's up this December, which is like in a couple weeks, believe it or not. Did you have any applications or did anybody reach out for her seat? Did you advertise? Right? Because it's kind of with COVID and all that.
There were no applications, and other than posting on the website, we did not advertise.
So no newspaper
Correct.
this year?
Correct.
Okay.
We recognize, after the discussion started with the school board, your discussion started actually, we recognize that there are some improvements that can be made in our process. So
Yes.
we now recognize that when we do have a person who, and I also want to correct that there is no such thing as a rolling over of a board member. A board member can elect to serve another term, and they need to be approved and voted on by the rest of the library board. And if there are other candidates, we would consider them as well up against that other person. So it's not like somebody can just decide to become a board member for another 7 years. And I forgot the question I was answering.
Oh, no, you answered it.
I did, okay.
And so, yeah, so Elaine,
Oh, yes, we recognize the need to do some improvements.
yeah,
So in
sure.
our new policy, we do recognize that even though we have, in years when we have a candidate who is a good board member who we want to be on the board again, we do recognize that we do need to publicly advertise that in the future to get more candidates to consider.
Yeah,
Madam President, would it
Yes,
be
sir.
okay if I provided a little bit of context for them that they may not have heard earlier?
well, I was gonna go through 1 through 5, one by one, but yeah, feel free.
Okay, so the reason that we are involved right now is there legally, statutorily, we have to, as a board of school board, appoint the board of trustees there.
Correct.
There.
Yes.
We're aware of that.
And there's a lack of institutional memory and knowledge as to what the processes were and how that was to occur. We have now this has now come to light. We know it's an issue. And so what we've done is we've talked among each other about how we'd like to proceed. And that's the list that she's going to provide, Madam President's going to provide. And what we're looking for is based on what we present, whether you have any input to that and whether you can provide suggestions, et cetera, and then engage in a collaborative process to come to the finish line.
Thank you,
Can I
Sonia.
add one?
Add whatever you want. I'll just, yeah.
Even though your trustees may have been sworn in, that's not the same as being appointed and elected. And so I feel that miscommunication between the trustee board and the school board has led to a lot
The
of
past boards, not this board.
has led to a lot of feelings that were intruding, because I'm sure you probably felt like, well, you swore them in, you knew about it. That is not the case. As a board, we did not know.
No.
And even if we did know and only swore them in, that still we still didn't appoint them through vote. So that's where the miscommunication has lied, and that's the only thing that we're trying to correct that process.
Correct.
Go ahead.
I don't dispute anything you just said. It's all factually correct. I would just add the context of this is that for literally years and probably decades, the process, unwritten either way on your board side or on our board side, has been that the library identifies the appointee, we communicate that appointee to the Board of Education. The Board of Education approves that person at a later month than that. Usually it's like December. And then they're sworn in our year opening meeting in January. From our perspective, we communicated who we had, and then we had a board member swear us in. We're not in the habit of checking the school board meeting minutes to see if
No, and
you guys follow through on that.
No,
So
we do not hold you accountable. No, absolutely not.
I just want to say, Mr. Wendell, the rolling over.
there's no role.
There's no rolling over.
But
That's a mischaracterization of what happens.
if I may, based on the attorney letter that we got that we shared with you, I think that the concept of rolling over is coming from the fact that when one 7-year term expires, and then that same individual goes on to a second term, but there's no appointment process between the first term and the second term, it looks like a rollover.
Agree completely,
Okay.
and that shouldn't happen
Yeah,
because every year we communicate who the appointment is.
yeah.
Even if it's a renewed term or not, we
Okay, so
communicate that.
we're-
And our assumption is that the board approves it in their December meeting and then we carry on with
So
our
I-
business in January.
So I think that's a great thing that we're coming together on and understanding maybe how perceptions, it was a perception thing because
If there was a perception that we didn't communicate when a person was doing a second term, that wasn't our intention.
But Mr. Wendell, if I may, yes, well, that's really not a perception, that's a fact, because we don't have anything in our minutes. Now, whether or not there was a phone call, I granted that, but what I'm saying, when we look at our minutes from 18, 19, and 20, and communications between the library and this board, I was told it's not there, because I was looking for that.
Sure, let me just slip in a couple of corrections there.
Okay.
You say 18, 19, and 20.
Yes,
This is still 20.
yes.
So you couldn't have checked the December minutes for 20 yet. So it's the December minutes for 18 and 19 for the
Well-
board of trustee position.
Or 17, 18, 19.
Sure, 17, 18, no, because in 17, it's in your minutes.
Yes.
If I may,
17, okay.
I
So we're talking
believe
about
this
2
was
years now.
18, 19.
But may I ask you a question on that? Because these are little things, but this is
Sure.
how maybe we're
But
going to iron things out.
secondly, I'm not finished my point here. Secondly, it's under ORC, it's the Board of Education's obligation to appoint the person. So the fact that it's not documented in your minutes, when we know that we reported it to you, that's an issue on Board of Education responsibility shoulders, not on ours.
So when you say a couple of things, help clear this up for me. So an appointment, would that be like in December, or would that be, let's take 2020 this year, the correct way, whatever that is, when would that appointment actually occur?
Typically at the end of the year before, so
Well,
19 or
typically in
20.
November.
So
we can invite
2019
the person to
would
a
have been
December
the-
meeting.
So I'm sorry, you said 2019, the end of 2019, which would effectuate for
Would be for
2020?
the term that starts in 20,
20.
January 20.
Okay. And then the second thing you said about the communication, I'm just curious, do you have that communication somewhere that came into this board?
From my understanding, it was done by a phone call.
Okay.
And again, that's,
Correct.
we have our new
It's
policy
been a
that we're
phone
gonna,
call.
we're gonna do it in writing now.
Yeah,
It's something
exactly.
we've
That's
learned.
all.
Yeah.
So that's something that we can all live and learn
And-
by.
and-
Yeah.
and,
So moving forward, let's
just
do
reminding me
emails.
just reminding me of something that, we typically invite the new board member to our
To
December
our
meeting.
December meeting.
So I think it actually probably happens at the new, historically speaking, I think you probably that, it probably happens before our December meeting that you guys typically have appointed the person.
Oh, before
I
December.
think we invite them as a guest to our December meeting.
We do.
Oh,
Typically, and then they become a board member in January,
oh,
just so
okay.
they can
No,
get
wait a
to know
minute,
us.
who
and
becomes
that
the
sort of-
board, the trustee?
You and Simon. So in other words, you and Simon would have gotten invited to the public library trustee meeting, right? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Oh.
No.
You guys are just confusing.
The new trustee that's been appointed
Of the library.
of the library.
Okay,
yes. We would
gotcha.
typically invite them to our December meeting,
Okay, that's.
so they can get a feel for how the meetings.
Oh,
work.
yes.
Yeah.
Then they become an official member
In
in January.
January, that makes sense.
Right,
Okay.
I attended a meeting with this board before I was actually
Yeah,
sworn in and my term started.
And when are your meetings typically?
We just.
like ours are Mondays. like-
They've always been the third Thursday of the month, but we just changed it. didn't we?
Okay, yeah, Thursdays,
For
ours are
November and
Mondays.
December.
They were always the fourth, we just changed it to the third, I think.
Yeah.
It's once a month.
When we
So,
say
Bill,
appointment,
oh,
that
sorry.
means appointment goes on our agenda and we vote on it as a board. It's different than the swearing in, which is more ceremonial.
Well,
If I may.
it's ceremonial, but it's legally required.
Yes.
If I may just, I think I've heard everybody said I could clarify pretty concisely here. I believe what Mr. Wendell has said is that their board meets, they review all the applications that they have available for potential trustees. Sometime in November, that is communicated to the Board of Education. Typically in the past, from your institutional memory and knowledge was done by a telephone call. Then you were under the impression that you had fulfilled your obligation and that the Board of Education at that point would take that person's name, place that on the agenda and appoint them as a board member. That's why there's no minutes of it, because that was lost on our end and it was not done. And you then would invite that person to your December meeting. They would come. Everybody in the library board of trustees would be under the impression they had already been appointed by the Board of Education. Then a board member will come and swear that person in, and you would be under the impression that the board had been appointed. That's why that, and what occurred, it appears, is that somehow the step of the appointment was lost on the Board of Education side, and it was viewed largely, it appears, suspectedly at least, as a ceremonial function of a board member of the Board of Education. And so now we understand that that's an issue. And so what we're trying to do is come up with a process that's in writing with the Board of Education that makes it clear, delineates what the obligations of both parties are. Now, the Board of Education has a lot of discretion in what it can do based on the statute and what was presented to us by our attorney. We've discussed kind of where we're heading, and I think that the points that you're going to provide are going to kind of get us to where I think is going to then engage in the collaborative process to get us to the policy.
So, yeah.
Madam President.
Yeah, so Bill, I appreciate what you said, because part of the confusion was one person said that this communication was made in an email, and then I actually attended your Zoom meeting last Monday, and I appreciated the fact that somebody said, you know what, I think it's always been a phone call. So now that we all agree that it's an email, then that puts it on the board, right? Because once you email us, then it's like, for instance, on September 23rd, you know, Asha was kind enough to reach out to me, and then I just forwarded that to the entire board. And now there's a written record. So if we ever have any kind of question, boom, we just pull it up. So you and I are on the same page, we're on the same page, do it in an email, and then boom, it's simple, it's done. There's a record, we can always reference it, easy. So that's, sorry, Simon.
No, it's you, Madam President.
Oh, no.
No, I think that what we can make it whatever we want. If we want to make an email.
Well,
we
Bill
can make it
suggested email, and I love that. I
That's
think
fine,
that's
yeah.
great, because a phone call, there's no record.
Right.
And so like when I did my, you know, I was searching through my emails, library trust, there was nothing because it's been a phone call. So I always just like email, just for reference purposes.
Just to be clear, I think our
Sure.
policy technically just says in writing. I don't think it says email, but
Oh, well, yeah, a letter, email, whatever you guys prefer. That's, yeah, anything's better than a phone call, because phone calls are easy to like not, you know, write down or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, so the other thing that we discussed, you know, tonight as a board was the joint collection of applications. Are you comfortable with the idea of everybody being able to fill out an application and turn it in at two places, one being the Board of Education and then also the Tipp City Public Library? Is that acceptable?
again, we can't speak for the board.
No, understood.
And that's not consistent with our current policy.
Okay.
I can't guarantee anybody's going to vote on a policy change,
Mhm.
but,
What is your current one, Bill? That
well, it doesn't say that they turned them into you. It says that they turned
turns them
them
into the library?
into the library director, yes.
As a director.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
Is that
then,
electronically or paper or
I
both?
think it can be either way.
Okay.
People can fill out the application electronically and email it in, or they can physically hand it in at the library.
So Bill, or Linda, when is your next, you said the fourth Thursday? I'm just trying to think, because, right?
Since it's December,
And
this
Christmas.
month, our meeting is this coming Thursday.
Oh, good. Because you know what I don't want to happen is, with Elaine's seat being up December 31st, and then we have that 45-day window, we want to make sure that, and then maybe a question right now that would be appropriate is, because you didn't advertise in the newspaper, during your Zoom meeting, one of your trustees announced that there is a person who wants to be on the library board, like currently for Elaine's spot. And then another trustee said, make sure that they reach back out to us in June or July. Is it feasible now to open up, like spots for Elaine's spot since it isn't expired?
Couple of points there.
Yeah.
Our board has already voted on who we recommend.
Gotcha, okay,
A month ago, so we consider the window closed.
understood.
Secondly, I believe that person has actually changed her mind and said she wants to run for school board.
Okay, that's fine. And I didn't know who it was. That's fine, no problem. And
But
then,
that doesn't mean that,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was just trying to get your process, with that.
Now, I'm just curious, a little bit off topic, because I did read something about if you're on the school board and you want to run for a library trustee, I think there's like a little waiting period
Yes.
there.
I think- I think
1 year.
Year.
It's
Yeah,
one year.
Does it work the other way if you're a library trustee and you want to go to the school?
That would be
board?
your
I
rules.
don't know.
No,
Do you
I've
know
never heard of
anything about
anything.
that, or-
I don't think that would make sense. If you want to run, right? Yeah.
It's probably something to check, but, this whole, statute is so new to all of us. I don't
It's
know.
not new, it's just new to us, right?
Well,
Yeah.
well, yeah,
I think that's a
it's
Board of
new.
Election rule.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have to be their rule.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Unless that's because the Board of Education has the appointing function to the library and the library doesn't have any function to the Board of Education.
That makes sense.
Yeah, okay. So the third thing we discussed was the whole interviewing process, and I know this is something that you guys are very passionate about. In the Shaker Heights policy, they have possibly up to two Board of Education members that join in with the library trustees during the interview. And right now, the way the Shaker Heights has it, it says appoints to. This school board wants to change that to may appoint to, because we have our organizational meeting in January. So what we'll do is we'll add this as one of our, subcommittees that we all attend. And maybe some years there will be two board members that want to do it. Maybe some years there will be zero. But we want to know how you feel about that. And also, how many people do you guys include in your interview process?
You or me? Typically, every board member, except for the one with an expiring term,
6.
participates in the interview process. So we
Okay.
have 6 board members that
That's a lot.
interview all potential candidates.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it does take time.
How much?
And I'm
time
sorry,
does-
there's a second party.
How much time does it take? Just curious.
1 year they had 14, 1 year 0.
No, I mean-
Probably an hour.
I mean-
I'd say the total
Per
evaluation process is at least 3 hours per candidate.
Oh, per candidate, 3 hours.
With reviewing your documentation and their application and all that total.
And then
Yeah.
discussing
Yeah.
their interview after their interview.
So hopefully you don't have a lot of 14 application years, right? Because you said the 1 year you had 14, that's a lot of time. So, okay,
You got a-
sorry.
You got a part B to your question.
Well, I was just trying to, the original question, how do you feel about having, up to 2 Board of Education members join your interview committee of 6, that's 8 people? And of course, you're not answering for your entire board, but
Yeah, and
what are your personal?
I would have to give the same answer as that's not consistent with our current policy,
Sure.
and I don't know how the board would vote on that.
Okay, great, that's fair. And then also, the other thing we wanted to discuss is, in the scenario of 2 Tipp City Board of Education members and 6 public library trustees in that interview process, and then you bring your recommendation to the Board of Education, we just want you to know that there would never be an instance where you come to us with your 3 people, and then we completely sidestep you and say, no, we're doing Bob Smith. So in the process and the policy, we would want you to know that we would only choose, the applicants that you give to us. It would never be a situation where the board goes rogue and comes up with some person that hasn't been vetted or interviewed by your group of 6.
I think that clearly, I don't think anybody would have any objection to that. The only point I would make there is that, have you thought about what to do in years when we don't have 3 candidates? When we only have 1 applicant?
Well, it's easy then. It's kind of a given, right?
So it's not a requirement to bring 3.
Oh, yeah, right. Absolutely not. We were using that as an example because like you said, one year you had 14, a lot of years you have 0. I get it. Now, we were just using that for an example. So
If I may,
sure.
Mr. Wendell, if you only have 1 applicant in that scenario, and let's say clearly that's not the right applicant, what do you do in that situation?
We
Go out and-
we probably be malicious to try to get more applicants,
We
probably.
recruiting efforts.
There's nothing specifically in our policy for that. I don't know if we've ever had that exact scenario, but
I don't think we've had it where we just had one who we didn't think would be a good fit.
I mean, I don't know, that seat, can it stay? How do you
well,
do that?
technically according to
Then Miami
according to
County.
law is that
Probate card, Miami County probate
well,
card.
but they only have a 15-day window to vote.
Oh, it's 45.
No, you have.
Oh, yeah, you're right. So
They have
that's
15.
fast. It is 15.
And
Yeah, that's
according
quick.
to ORC, unless a trustee resigns or is removed for malfeasance, which is, a whole legal process in of itself, so that person stays in their position
Until replaced.
Oh,
until the term ends.
that's a
They can't
long,
be kicked out. They have to resign.
right.
So if you have a term as a board of trustee that's not filled by either
So if the person resigns, the term ends and they're done.
the Board of Education or the probate court, what you're indicating is that that person's term is beyond the 7 years until they resign, until someone else is appointed, or I'm not sure.
I'm
if you
sorry,
said that.
I
guess I
follow the question.
So you're indicating the probate court is limited to 15 days?
Correct.
Yeah.
And then, so if the probate court is limited to 15 days and we're limited to 45 and no one's been appointed by either the Board of Education or the probate court, what you're indicating that the revised code says that person continues to serve until when?
Appointment.
Until they resign
7 more
or
years.
there's a term or the term ends.
Yeah.
So then that renews for a 7-year term at that point, is what you're saying, not until the next year?
Correct.
Actually, though, I think it was Linda that sent that. Was it 3.0? About the oath that you
Oh, I have it.
remain in there until the appointment occurs. And the way I read that is that it was sort of like a cushion for transitioning. If you like this scenario, if let's say no candidates or the one that, that's not acceptable, that person's, Linda, did you have that email date that you sent us? It was a nice packet.
Isn't it just a copy of ORC?
It was Friday morning.
What would that?
It is a copy of ORC, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, is it the one that?
There were several in there. What's the date on that? Trying to find my emails.
That's the one I just resent.
Is that December 4th?
You
Is that
had an
Friday?
attachment, you had in like several sections of ORC. And I can't remember
I think it might.
What are you trying to
I think
figure
it
out?
might be in your inbox right now. I think I just
Yes.
resent it today.
Oh, you resent
Oh,
it?
okay. What are you trying to
During
figure out?
this
Maybe I
meeting.
can help
I
you.
think I resent it.
Linda Mark resent. Yes, that is it. Okay, today's email, if everybody goes there,
Okay.
sent out, today at 6:36 PM. And then there's two links or 2 attachments, the one that says library ORC.
Yes.
I thought that was interesting, the last one that has, no, not reading anymore. Oh, there it is, 3.01. Continuation in office until successor elected or appointed and qualified.
Okay.
So and then I tried to position that with 3357.15, which clearly there always needs to be an appointment, whether it's a new term, a second term, a term that didn't expire yet, and you're replacing, that appointment process is still relevant and all those. And that's in 3357.15C. And so the way I thought about this is that it's right, it's like, okay, that makes sense. It gives like you a holding period or allows you to be legal during that transition.
I don't know what, and this is probably more like for lawyers that are versed in this as far as what happens after 15 days, 45 days, and all of those other situations. I do have a question about your policy that says the process of selection shall include, at the very bottom of your thing, it said the library director will distribute all applicant packets to board members who do not have expiring terms. If the board member with the expiring term has elected to be considered for an additional term, the director will also communicate notice of that intent to the remaining board members. And the steps are not numbered, but so I guess my question is the next thing that will happen, the part underneath it that says the board will decide whether to recommend an additional term for the board member with the expiring term or to interview applicants. So to me, that means you're going to decide whether or not the person that wants another term is going to be selected before you know who else wants to also join your board?
That's how I read it.
I think the intention is to consider them together. There may be some wordsmith in the policy, I don't know, but I think the intention was to consider all applicants, including a person who chooses to.
Because if you
Who
look at
wants to have a second term, or a third term, or a fourth term.
yeah, and if you look, it says.
Well, Elaine does, right?
She wants to have a second term.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, yeah, that's, yeah.
So if, I don't know if you use this policy in connection with her, like, did you guys, like, does it go, hey, Elaine wants to be considered, and then you decide that, and then whether you say, yes, we're gonna give her another one, or no, we're not, and then we're gonna look at applicants. Because that's what it reads.
Yeah, I
Board
did have
member
that
with the
highlighted.
expiring term, or to interview applicants.
We can certainly look at a revision of this policy.
Well, and here becomes the question, because now that you, I mean, of course, you're speaking for just, yourselves, two of, the 2 of 6, right? 7, 2 of 7. So yeah, you're speaking for 2 of 7. So now that, I actually had that same sentence highlighted because it's really important because we agreed that we're going to jointly publicize. So from where we sit, we want, every time a seat expires, we want the entire community to be able to turn in an application for that seat. And the way I'm reading this is, okay, Teresa's seat is up, the 7 library trustees, do we want to keep Teresa or not? And if 4 library trustees says yes, keep her, then there's no application process, that it just kind of, right, you do your second, okay, you understand.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying,
Okay.
and I don't believe that was the intent of the policy.
No.
I think
And then-
we should go back and approve.
Yeah, that's
The
all.
other
Yeah.
thing that neither side has addressed is what do you do if for whatever reason somebody cannot fulfill their term? And also, like, whenever that happens, are we just gonna say we're gonna do the same process? So if I find out in March that I can't complete my term, do we start that process in March and say in a 45-day window?
Yeah, our policy does refer to midterm vacancies.
Okay, where's that at? I missed that.
Second paragraph.
Second paragraph, because we probably need, because we haven't talked about that.
Can I get oriented, please? I'm sorry. Where is this? The second
In our
paragraph?
policy, in the second paragraph,
Yep, it's right there.
Which is each November?
yes, in the middle of
Yes.
that paragraph, it
Okay.
says, when a midterm vacancy occurs.
That was addressed in Mr. Stefanic's template or suggested policy. That
So-
was-
The first one from the
Yes,
policy.
that was in there as
Yes.
well. I liked that wording.
And do we do the whole thing? Do we advertise for it again?
Mhm,
Is
I
that?
think so.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, yeah.
May I say something to the trustees? I was really surprised to find out your terms are 7 years. I think that's really long, and I was really surprised that there's no financial compensation. So I realized right off the bat, it's, to me, a very big commitment. I think it's a very honorable commitment. And I certainly appreciate the uniqueness of, operational uniqueness of a library. And so I appreciate the commitment to that. My where I landed sort of on, as a preliminary take in all of this, I just want to be clear. I really want to see access. It's not that if some trustee finishes their first term and they did an outstanding job and you'd love to have them back, that makes sense. But also, I just felt like you could have had somebody here move into Tipp City from Washington, DC that worked at the Library of Congress. I mean, you know, that person could be an outstanding applicant too, or whatever. So that's all I'm trying to say. Even though you do have a very great candidate and it's probably sort of a given that they'd be a good fit for that, I would just like to see that still opened up.
Yes, and we're in agreement with that. And our new policy says that we agree that we should be doing more to advertise.
To me, it's
in those
just
years.
being open-minded to the fact that there could be something else out there that.
So the fifth thing that we discussed is, we've already discussed it, so I'll just say it. For obvious reasons, you know, the Board of Education will approve, you know, the library trustee position in our December meeting. Because, right, you're reaching out to us in November saying, here are our one people, or, you know, however many, usually one person. And then just so that we have it official, we will always do that every December. Because you do your swearing in January, so we will always do that at our December meeting, and that way we're not holding you up, and we're accountable to doing that every December.
Okay.
And at that time, then we as the five can determine who will be the representative that goes to their swearing in.
Yes.
Yeah, we could do that in December instead of January, sure, because we said January organizational meeting.
Yeah.
But they meet the end of the month,
yeah.
Thursdays, we meet beginning. So, okay, so the one thing out of the 5 points that we went over, the one thing, luckily you're meeting Thursday and we're meeting Monday. Sorry to talk with the mask on, so that works out. The joint collection of applications, we weren't really sure about that. And then you weren't sure how your board would feel about 2 Board of Education members joining your team of 6. So those were kind of the things that we maybe needed more clarification on. So since you're meeting this Thursday, if we could get that information, that'd be great, because then we're meeting on Monday, our board meeting.
Yeah.
We can commit to having that on our agenda.
Is that good? Okay. And then also, you know, since you were sitting out there for an hour, even though it was hard to hear, what questions, you know, do you have for us? What else can we answer, or anything?
Do you want to go? I mean, is it still relevant now, what you?
I don't know that it is still relevant.
We had prepared some statements, but
Sure.
based on all of the discussion, many things have already been covered, so it may not be super
Well,
relevant.
There's
All of
one-
it may not be relevant anymore,
Yeah,
but
that's what I have to. One thing I do want to say is if you are aware of anyone who was excluded from our Board of Trustees application process, I want to know who that was and when it happened, because I'll follow up on that.
Thank you for that too, Linda. But
that-
sometimes people aren't comfortable, you know, saying that, you know, it's just,
I'm comfortable saying it.
well, no, I mean, the people that may have felt excluded, sometimes they just like,
Nobody likes to make waves, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
well, I mean,
Well, it's either they applied or they didn't.
Yeah.
Well, there is one other paragraph that I had prepared that I think needs to be clarified. According to ORC 3375.33, the library and its Board of Trustees are entities separate and distinct from the school district where they are located. The library board has broad powers to expend all money for library purposes, whether that money comes from the state or the county. This also means that the library board, as a separate and individual entity, is solely responsible for the library finances. I think there was some confusion over that in the past, and I would like that to be straightened out. Yeah, Bill, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was gonna say before you comment, and Bill, do you have anything else to add? Or Linda, you can speak again, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read what I had written because like I said, a lot of it's already been covered. I want to emphasize, I guess, a couple of things. I just want to say that I think it's important that the library board of trustees has the ability to vet potential future members of our board, because we have the, to use Simon's terms, the institutional memory, the institutional knowledge of what it takes to run the library, and what our roles and responsibilities are, and the kinds of qualities of characters that we're looking for, quality of character that we're looking for. I also want to emphasize that in both the advertisement that you have a copy of, and I believe in our policy, we talk about the need for diversity on our board and how we look for people with different backgrounds, different professional backgrounds, different life experiences, who can bring different perspectives to the board. I did hear some of the conversation, and it almost sounded as though we had sort of a good old boys club and that we were inviting our friends to join the library board. I honestly knew, but I wasn't friends with one member of the library when I was selected to be on the library board. I didn't know the other 5 people. I didn't know at all.
I didn't know anyone on the library board.
And I think similar stories you'll hear from all the library board members. I'm happy to say that they're all my friends now. I think that we have, and I think the library board has an excellent history of decision-making and consensus building and working together to do the things for the best of the library. If you went back and looked at the historical record of our votes, I would venture to say that 95% of our votes are unanimous on any kind of issue, because we talk things through and we come to consensus agreements before we have votes. There are very, very few where there is a no vote. I can think of 2. I can think of 2 in my 4 years on the board where one person may have said no. So I just think that we have a spirit of cooperation on the board that reflects, I think, very well in the spirit of the library. The other thing that I just wanted to just validate is the terms on the board that Patrick Reese and Matt Tarazinski are currently serving in. And I just want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding or no outstanding questions about the fact that despite some of the communication issues that occurred around the time of their beginning their second terms, that there's no question about the legality of their positions on the board.
Are you asking us that?
I think so, yeah. Yes, I am.
have no idea.
I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I think that unfortunately there is, in that they weren't appointed by the board. So no one board member can act alone. And the fact that we neglected to act doesn't make it right, but it didn't occur. And so while you've been talking about the other issues, I've been trying to figure out how you remedy that issue. And I'm not sure I understand it. And I'm not a school attorney, so I'm not going to provide an opinion, but I think that, it sounds like you've got a good library board of trustees. I think that's something that we need to figure out.
I believe it still has to go through probate.
And that's what, the way I read it, Simon, I kind of agree with everything you said is, and like I said, I'm not an attorney, but the way I read everything is because unfortunately we did miss that 45-day window. It has to go to the probate court.
It doesn't mean that the probate court doesn't need to appoint.
Right, exactly.
They
They could very easily say it's Matt and Patrick, right? I mean, it's not like I don't want to speak for the probate court, I don't. But to your own admission, you spent 3 hours per applicant, right? I can't imagine that they have a lot of extra time right now that, I don't know, but the way I see it is it does have, those 2 seats do have to be brought to the attention of Miami County Probate Court.
I'm not going to go as far as to say they have my personal feeling, not for the board, that it has to be brought by the probate court. I'm just saying that needs to be explored and understood better is where we are with these 2 terms. And I don't know the answer to that looking at the statute because it doesn't really provide I'm looking at 3375.15, I'm reading it.
Do you think it's our responsibility to find an answer for the library, or is that something that the library takes care of for themselves?
I'm good with it either way. I just feel that we don't want to leave a loose end here.
Yeah.
I think that's something the library needs to follow up on.
And we actually did with the Ohio Library Council and their legal counsel.
Okay,
And they, I don't want to say anything that's not true, so let me find the right spot in my paper here.
and there,
Maybe we should double check on this.
yeah, I would,
Yeah, I believe that we're legally on solid ground, but I would rather.
and I'm not saying that you're not. What I'm saying is, we didn't fulfill our obligation. And so now there's a question of that needs to be answered. The answer could be, from a legal perspective, we didn't act for 45 days, the probate court didn't act within the next 14 days, and therefore ABC is the legal result. But I don't know the answer to that, but I think that would be a good idea to find the answer.
Okay, we will take that action. We'll add it to our agenda for Thursday.
If I can help you, Bill, so it would be Ohio Revised Code 335.15, if that helps. With the provision of RC Code 335.15, the Board of Education, 45 days has expired. So the Miami County Probate Court, but yeah, just let us know.
Wow.
Okay.
Email us or reach out to us.
3375.15 indicates that we will do it no later than 45 days after the end or the expiration of the term or the vacancy.
Right.
And then after that, the court, based on this reading, the probate court has 14 days to make the appointment. Now, I don't know what happens now that we're beyond both the 45 and the 14 day. And the reason is there's probably something out there that answers that question. And I'm reading a statute in a vacuum, which we don't want to do. So I think there's a question that needs to be answered as to how we deal with this going forward.
Yeah.
That's all.
And all we're trying to do is just come together and figure this out, right? I mean,
I'll read to you what we got back from, since it's here in writing from them. To the extent a library trustee is not affirmatively replaced at the end of their term via appointment of a successor by the Board of Education or the probate court, then such trustee may continue to serve in the role of trustee unless they affirmatively resign or no longer meet the statutory requirements for serving in such a role, as stated in ORC 3.01, which reads, a person holding an office of public trust shall continue therein until his successor is elected or appointed and qualified, unless otherwise provided in the Constitution of laws of the state.
Yeah, and so what that does is, do we have, were they serving at that time?
Correct.
No, I mean, so for Mr. Tarzinski, for example, is this his first term?
No.
No.
So this was his second term.
Correct.
So then he would currently be appropriately the trustee based on that. But the question that is in my mind is, without understanding more, is when does it ever get back to, it's not a perpetual term for life.
Correct.
So what sets off the time for us to revisit that issue? Is it the next year? Is it another 7-year term?
It's a 2-term.
And so
There's no term limit.
Two
oh, we were at
terms.
2 term. Everything we said was 2 terms.
We previously had in our bylaws, limited to two terms.
Yeah.
And the Ohio Library Council advised us to remove that because term limits are against the law. And we removed it probably
Yes.
2 years ago from our bylaws.
So that's.
Unless something has changed in the laws in the last couple of years, but that's what we were advised to remove.
Has somebody served 3?
What?
Has somebody served 3?
Well, before we even had the 2-term limit, there was a woman who was on the
Oh, yeah,
board for
Jean.
20-some years.
That's interesting because everything I've read is a 2 term limits.
We were advised, we had the term limits in our bylaws and we were advised.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because what would have.
Now, for somebody to serve 2 or more terms is
I
really unheard of.
have a quick question about the probate court. They're limited to 15 days. Is that after receiving notice that they need to appoint somebody?
doesn't say that in the statute. It just says,
Because I would imagine that how can their 15 days run out when they didn't even know they happened?
Right, so
You know?
if a spot expires on, December 31st, and then
Yeah, there's,
15 days, the clocks, the way I read it is the clock starts. So that would be like January 15th-ish.
No, it starts out.
I think between the two, it's 60 days or so, 59 days.
But like, I'm just wondering in this situation, since we didn't know that we didn't do it, you didn't know that we didn't do it, the probate court doesn't know that they're not doing it. Like, you know,
Great
can't they
question.
just?
That's a good question.
Good question, don't know.
okay, and there is an answer. It could be in a statute, it could be in a case, or
It's
it
somewhere.
could be a matter of first impression and somebody's gonna fill in the blank for us, but I think that we should just say that it's a question that needs to be answered. And if they're willing to spend the time and money to get there, I think I'm good with letting them do that.
We will add to our agenda.
Sorry to
No, that's,
add to your agenda, but it's nice that we're gonna have this cleaned up once and for all. And, you know, it's a one-time thing. We're gonna be done with it and then we're all good to go. That's the positive, right?
and I sense that we're wrapping up.
Oh, no, don't feel rushed.
But I do want to say, something about Elaine Stefanovic,
Yeah, sure.
who is the trustee that we have recommended that you appoint for the next 7-year term.
Is this first term or
This is a second term for Elaine.
Will be a second.
It would be a second term, correct. I would just like to personally say that I think Elaine is a very valuable trustee. She's been a trustee since 2014. She was a past board president. She was the secretary twice. She served on the library's facilities and operations committee, chairing the operations committee twice, and she was on the personnel committee twice. She was the chair of the personnel committee twice. And this is important. As part of the facilities committee, Elaine was heavily involved in the 2012 storm damage remediation, where we had extensive construction of the library. She was involved heavily in the 2016 north entrance addition to our library. And she's currently heavily involved, again, as a part of the facilities committee, in the HVAC renovation. The HVAC in the library, I don't know if you know, was a boiler that was supposed to last for 20 years, and we were on our 60th year of operation of that thing, so it had to be replaced. And it's a massive undertaking to replace an old boiler to try to modernize it and put it in a new building, and she's heavily involved in that. In 7 years, she has missed one meeting.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Prior to being a library trustee, she was a member of the Friends of the Library, which is a civic organization that supports the library, from 2010 to 2013, and she served as its president from 2011 to 2013. And prior to 2013, 100% of Tipp City Library's funding came from the public library fund, the state sales tax funded public library fund. Because of budget cuts, we felt the need to ask for a levy. So in 2012, we put our very first levy ever on the ballot, and she took an effective leadership role in that levy committee, and it passed with an astounding 76% of the vote. So I think Elaine's credentials speak for itself. Doesn't speak for itself because I just spoke for it. But I think Elaine's credentials speak well of her deserving to be approved for a second term. That's all.
Thank you.
Yes. And I do love that north entrance.
It's been wonderful, and it's been a lifesaver because of COVID.
I bet it
Because
has.
we can do car side delivery
Yeah,
to people.
and that's
we couldn't before.
that's the entrance I use if I'm not, downtown getting, something to eat or whatever, but I love, and you have your deposit there, it makes a lot of sense. That was a very good call.
I do have one additional question. Do you have, what is the ratio of trustees that are new versus trustees that have been renewed?
You're in your first term?
Three, yeah.
I'm in my first term. Pam is in her first term. William's in his first term. Technically, Elaine's in her first term. And then Patrick and Matt are in their
So you
second.
have a little group of renewals that are helping to kind of train up your next flight, like four.
I haven't thought
versus
about it that
three?
way, but I suppose.
Yeah, and guide them.
Well, are there any other questions?
Do you,
Linda, Bill, I sense that Ann has a question. Ann, sorry.
I'm just curious, I couldn't find your meeting minutes on the website. Is that, you don't put those on
I
there?
know they're all posted. I don't know exactly how
Where was that?
I don't know exactly how to tell you to get them, but we
Yeah,
can
because
have somebody send you an email tomorrow with a link or something, but Yeah, they're all posted.
Because I didn't know if you had, because I think if you, some organizations, you have to make the request for the, they're there,
Oh.
but it's not publicized.
No, I think ours are,
Because I couldn't.
you know what, I'll check on that. I'm pretty sure that they're all posted there, but I'll double check. I'm pretty sure they're all posted. Certainly, if anybody asks for them, they can have them, but
Yeah, right, but
I think they're posted.
Does anybody else have anything for Mr. Wendell or Mrs. Parsons? No, well, thank you for attending our meeting. I know
Thank you very much for your time. I
Thursday.
appreciate it very much.
So we'll get an email from you maybe on, you think Friday, since we're meeting on Monday, with those last couple of questions?
We'll do our best.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I've just been told that they're not posted on the website, but a public records request will.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
I know
that.
how to do that.
Can you
But
do a
don't
great
make me.
decision, Dave? Okay. Okay, so is there anything on our end that we need to wrap up regarding library trustee discussion after speaking to
Who's,
Bill and Linda? They're gonna get back to us on a couple things. Go ahead.
so we need to create a draft from what we've agreed to tonight, for voting on the next, or for first read on the next board
Well,
meeting. Is
here's,
that how it's gonna
yeah, but
work?
we don't, go ahead, Mr. Stefanovic, were you ready to say? I caught you in a bad time. Okay, because you took your mask off. Well, we're waiting on a couple of things for them regarding
Do we need to wait for that?
joint collection. Yeah, how does that work?
What I would suggest is that we
Right,
approve, one of us, and I'm glad to volunteer to do it, to draft a policy and give that individual authority to get some input back from the library board. And what I could do is I could draft a policy that reflects kind of the consensus that we had, keep that separate as a one draft, and then I could draft a second draft that says, here's a library board policy with the input. And then we'd have these two things to discuss the next time. And then I can email it the day before, just so long as we don't come back with revisions or anything like that. And then we can then discuss it when we get to the next meeting. And then if what we've come up with our consensus and their suggestions that I integrate work for everybody, it could become a first read that day.
I agree with that. Here's my question, is Dave brought up a great point, because I'm looking at the Shaker Heights Schools one, and you're gonna do what you're gonna do. The question is, because the way the Shaker Heights one is, it says library board. So are you gonna leave that part out? Because to Dave's point, we can't have anything in ours that, that includes the library, because we're not the library.
Well, I'm not so sure that we can.
Yeah, I don't know either.
And so I have not looked at the statutes. I have not looked into anything beyond 3375.15.
Correct.
And the letter that we received from our attorney. Based on that, I would suspect that we have the rights to kind of drive a certain extent of what the policy will be, their implementation and management of the school beyond our appointment of the board of trustees is their thing. They're free to manage the library expenditures and all that, but I think that we have some discretion here. But because we're engaging in the collaborative process,
Right.
I think that it's probably going to be a moot issue where we don't even have to think about it. My feeling is that with what we've discussed as a consensus and any things that they might revise is going to be more logistical than anything else. I could be wrong. So what I would suggest is that I'm going to largely keep a lot of this library board stuff. Because what I'm going to do is those things that we have here as a template,
Yes.
I'm going to try to keep as much as I can of this, then have their input. So like to me, library board, like the considerations of like interest in the library, all that, I'm just going to leave that in there. If they don't like it, they want to add or remove, then we'll have a separate thing. Essentially, I'm going to take this Shaker Heights policy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it essentially the same, other than where we kind of have a consensus that we have joint obligations relate to certain things and where we're removing some of our ability to make ultimate decisions beyond what's provided, things like that. If that works for people, I'm glad to do it.
I think that's a great idea, Simon, because what I like about what it says about the public libraries is it doesn't tie them down to what it looks like, really. It just is basically they're gonna look for a candidate, and it lists some qualities that they should be in consideration of. And that's it. So that if they needed to make changes due to laws, like he noticed that they had in there, so nobody's allowed to serve more than 2. And then the library told them, actually, that's against the law. You can't do that. If we tie it down really, really specifically, then they're not going to be able to be flexible, or we're going to have to keep revising our policy. And anytime they make a change, because it needs to match.
Well, yeah, because the collaboration part, like the first part, number 1, notifies the president of the Board of Education 2 months in advance of vacancy.
Right.
I just want to make sure that 2 months is okay with them. Like, I don't want to put 2 months in our thing and have them say, you know what I'm
That's
saying?
too early
I
or
want to
whatever.
accommodate, right? Because this year we got it in November, I got it in September 23rd.
To me, notification should be a joint obligation.
Yeah, that's my
too.
point. I don't want to just put that in there.
Well, we should be notifying them, because I mean, if we're involved in an appointment, we'll know
Right.
the term, we'll know when it's ending. And
Mhm.
with a combined institutional memory and combined institutional policies in place, it's a lot less likely to occur again. And because what's gonna, I mean, this has been for 80 years, I don't even, a long time, decades. When we're all dead, something's gonna happen and it might not be there anymore, who
Right.
knows? But so if we have 2 people providing notice, I think that's fine. So if that's okay, I'll add that to the list of things.
Yeah,
But
and then, sorry, go.
no,
No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I'll try to keep true to this Shaker Heights policy,
Yeah.
except where we're removing the things that relate to the board driving a lot of the process beyond collecting and potential participation by 2, things like that. Then I'll suggest, I'll reach out to the library board, ask them to meet with me individually, get their feedback, and then I'll try to get that done before they have their board meeting. And hopefully I'll have a template without their input, as keeping true to what they had here, other than Shaker Heights had here, other than what we've revised. I'll have hopefully something that we've had input on and hopefully approved by the library board of trustees. If not, at least something they had input on. And then I'll present that. And then after that, we can go from there and decide whether it's good for a first read or whether we need to have another work session.
Simon, I like that. Number 3, this is one thing that I would want their feedback on, because it says considers desirable qualifications as compiled from surveys of the library literature.
Oh, yeah, we didn't do that.
Yeah, because I don't want them to feel like they have to do that, or
Have to
we're
do a survey
putting that
now.
on them.
Yeah.
So if you look at number 3, to me, that's something that should be decided by them. Right?
Yeah.
Considers desirable
just-
qualifications.
Yeah, like you could
I don't
probably
like that whole
take that
thing.
whole 3 thing out.
Yeah, it's up to you, but I don't like that. Because I feel like we're putting something on them that
A whole lot of
it's
work.
not my job to put that on them.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
and they'll provide us that feedback
Okay.
and I mean,
I just don't want us to give them that and then think that we think they have to do that. 'Cause we
I'll make
don't.
it clear that right now, the only consensus we've reached is what we've discussed, which
Okay.
jointly advertising, jointly collecting with a deadline, reconciling the joint collection, so both the Board of Education, the Library Board of Trustees knows who's applied on both sides, then providing those all to the Library Board of Trustees, providing the ability of the Board of Education to appoint 2 board members to participate if we end up doing that, but not
If
required
desired, yeah.
participation. And then after that, they're interviewing these candidates and providing us with either
Mhm.
their chosen candidate or a number of candidates for our appointment.
Yep.
So if they come to a decision to say, yeah, and this is more of a point of clarification, not an assertion. As I understand it, is if they have an interview process and they have 5 candidates and we like this person, we'd like this person appointed. They have the ability based on our consensus to just provide us 1. If
Sure.
they're like, it's up in the air, you guys can be the bad guys, we're gonna give you 2, then that's fine too. Is that right?
That's how I thought it.
All right.
Yeah.
If I can say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel before something's generated and then sent to the library, I'd like to see that product, whatever.
Yeah, Simon's gonna bring it on Monday or email it us on Sunday.
Well,
No, on Sunday.
I get what you're saying. So I think Ann's point is that
Somebody said.
I think Ann's point is well taken, but I understand the reason we're doing it. So Ann's point is again, well taken, is that if I draft something and presented at the board meeting after input of the library board of trustees, we've gone down a road very, very far. And at that point, you're working on something that you have to revise.
Maybe undo that.
And it's hard, it's, you know, kind of the thing I always worry about is the answer to the question is often how it's phrased. And so it could be very easy to do that. And I think that's a very fair point. And I'm not going to, I have nothing to say that can undo that point. The only issue that we currently have is that we're up against a deadline. And so
And what is that deadline? I'm getting lost here.
so and it could be a self-imposed, is that we were trying to get this done by the next board meeting to have a first read. There's nothing, I believe, that stops us from saying, you know what? They've provided us Elaine's name as a candidate. We can appoint, we can all agree that we shouldn't just decide that now, but I'm just, logistically, I'm giving us theoretical examples. Elaine's a good person. We're going to vote on that appointment at our next board meeting without a policy or procedure in place. That provides then the ability for us to then meet through work session.
Thank you.
And that way we're not working on this self-imposed policy deadline.
That's what I support.
We do need to decide about the two, and Bill's gonna get back to us
Well, that's
on,
in
Bill and
progress.
Linda are gonna get back to us on that.
Well, I don't know whose hands that.
Yeah, I don't either.
I would suspect it's still in the probate court's hands, but I'm not sure. I don't want to provide it'd be wild speculation for me to say. So I think that we were going to let them take the ball and run with it and then let us know which.
Because the reason I bring this up, I think the last thing we want to do is create something, not whether it be, you know, unintentionally, and then send it to the library, and then we get a look at that. It's like, well, we don't need to complicate communications. We need to streamline this and be cohesive. And so I like the idea of moving forward hypothetically, if we're going to appoint someone, and then taking that off the table and then allowing a little more time to look at that first draft policy before it goes to the.
Then what I would suggest is that we proceed as we just discussed, except that I'm going to meet with the library board of trustees, get their input and suggestions. Then we table this from this work session to our next work session, where I would still provide the skeleton template of what we started with without the board's input, then what they provided input, and then we can then move forward if we want to, or go back in some more work sessions. Then we have a whole year to go through it. And so then, but we can still act on Elaine at the next board meeting, just by simply having Ms. Dunaway and Mr. Stefanovic to put that on the agenda for the appointment.
Yeah, I was just gonna tell Dave right now.
Well, I believe, I actually kind of thought that's what we had said to them about a half hour ago and said that's what we were gonna do, so.
Okay, well, then, if we said that, then, I mean, it makes sense to me, but I can't, so.
Yeah.
So then, if that's good with everybody, and I can take that and I'll report back to us.
Yeah, and plus I don't want to put the timeline on you because they're meeting Thursday. It's the holidays, you're busy, you have a family, you know what I'm saying? That gives us all more time, and I don't want to rush you because we're all busy this time of year. So I like the idea.
I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, I like the idea of approving Elaine. That's great. Get it, Dave, you've already added that to.
Hypothetically.
Well, hypothetically, putting Elaine on the agenda. And
We'll
then
get
that,
the info from the board,
Right,
the
and that
library,
gives us-
what we've done in the
yeah,
past.
but we do want to keep it time. We don't want this to turn into June or July. We do want to wrap it up. We don't want it dragging out. So, yeah.
Right, and then by Monday, if you wanted to put that, you know, if you try to do the policy on Monday, then there's also the attorney review.
Right,
of
we have
the
to get
draft
it,
policy,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
everything just kind of gets really jammed up over the weekend, so.
The one thing that I feel confident is the Shaker Heights. If you look at their board members, one of them works at Case Western Law School or something. I mean, so I feel confident that this is that gives me confidence that this is valid.
If he was present when they made the policy.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But I was like, oh, wow.
Again, in looking at that, it doesn't look too far off from.
No, it
the
doesn't.
template, so they probably started with that and then just tweaked it.
Yeah, it's very similar to all the other things I've read.
The difference between this and Neola is that Shaker Heights Board of Education, when they drafted this policy, wanted to be hands-on selection. It doesn't appear that we're interested in that. We just want to be involved in the process to have some awareness of what's occurring and ensuring that we're fulfilling our appointment obligation. Is that right?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. So are we good? Are we ready to wrap this up? And
Yes.
Ann, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We spent money on a legal opinion regarding the library issue. So I just want to reference that since this has been released and it's on the second page. We keep talking like sort of in nebulous terms as far as the last two, the trustee seats in 2018 and 2019. According to the legal opinion that we paid for, it says since the two trustee seats that were open at the end of 18 and 19 need to be filled in accordance with the provisions of 3335.15 by the Board of Education, or since more than 45 days, which is the case here, has expired, it's the probate court. So.
Well, I think they said we think the wisest, I think the words exactly, I don't have it in front of me, was something along the lines, the most prudent approach would be to involve the probate court for the process
No,
or
it
something
doesn't
like
say
that.
that at all. It says, or 45
Yeah.
days.
I think we had a letter from our attorney here.
Yeah, I'll read it. If the Board of Education does not make an appointment by that time, the appointment shall be made within the next 14 days by the probate court of the county in which the library is situated. Now, Bill said he would check on that because they have a meeting Thursday. So he's going to get clarification, but the way we read it is it's beyond the 14 days and it needs to be handled.
45 days. It's beyond the 45 days.
If the Board of Education does not make an appointment by that time, the appointment shall be made within the next 14 days by the probate court of the county in which the library is situated.
Yeah, so we got another letter
Are we past the 14 days?
on
Oh, yeah, because that was.
On December 1st, our legal counsel circled back on this library issue in the letter they gave us. And they said,
My
the
internet.
rollover turns out, blah, blah, blah. So due to the mandatory language in the statute, we believe this is the proper course of action for the Board of Education at this time. Where does it sit at probate court?
Here you
Because the Board of Education did not approve the appointment of two trustees within 45 days of a vacancy, due to the absence of notice from Library Board of Trustees and its flawed appointment of prior trustees, we know that's factually inaccurate now, but still, the fact remains that we didn't. It says,
What are you reading, Simon? I'm
I'm
sorry.
reading the letter from Helen Carroll,
When did that come in?
December 1st, 2020. We recommend that notice of the vacancies be provided to Miami County Probate Court by the Board of Education for the court's consideration and action to appoint individuals to fill. So that's a recommendation. Doesn't mean that's the process, or like, it could be just like, you know, that's probably the best way to approach it. But I think that let's see what they come up with. And then we can then decide whether we want to take action to that route, or they take the action to that route. You know, I don't think it's, you know, I can't speak for the probate court or anybody here, but I think that if we hear them and they say, oh, we got to go to probate court, they could probably take it over and we still don't have to worry about it, as long as we understand that something's been done. And if, I guess my feeling is that it's not clearly within the probate court. That's the recommended course of action. They're going to look into it as well. I would say we understand this is an issue, it's on our radar, and we come back and see what we've got after we hear back from the library.
Sorry, I'm just reading this again because it's been.
And based on what Bill said, the legal opinion that they have for the, and I can't remember if there was another statute mentioned in there.
3.01 is what I think you said.
Yeah, until that process gets vetted and we find out who's supposed to do what, the trustees just stay there.
And I think that's
They
true.
just maintain their seat, but there's no timeline, like, do they get another 7-year term, or do they get a year?
That's what I read.
Because sometimes with elected seats, they say until the next election.
To
Right.
in order for governance to continue.
Right.
It allows a
Right.
window.
So if it takes a little while for the probate court to act on it or whatever, they'll still have a full 7 people until it gets finalized.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to speculate that the probate court's going to be the one making the decision, based on the fact that no notice was provided, like Corinne, you pointed out, but I don't know that. Let's see what they come up with and we can kind of.
I do think that this falls on us. I think that the Board of Education are the ones that have to work to reach out to Miami County Probate, not the library. Because we were in charge of the appointee process, and so the negligence would be ours. So I think it's our job that we have, it's on us to reach out to Miami County Probate.
Well, here's the issue is that Mr. Tarzinski's term, the first term was in existence and we failed to act. And based on what I've heard here, I haven't reviewed this, it appears that he's still appropriately there. And so there could be a different procedure for that. I don't know. And so if we take action without letting them follow through, we could be doing something that's counterproductive in that, oh, well, we didn't need to do anything related to Mr. Tarzinski. It renews unless he resigns for 7 years, or we do need to take action. If we need to take action, I'm not opposed to taking action if we have to, but I just say, let's just, I guess I'm not concerned about another week. We're already.
Oh, no, I'm not either. I was just, the way I'm reading it is I just think that it's on us. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree.
Okay.
We need to figure.
I'm not going to act on it, don't think I am.
No, I think we have a responsibility to ensure that this loose end is tied up, and that's, I think I expressed that. But.
And we lose nothing by giving them time to.
No, absolutely.
Look into it, and it might ultimately be that we have to do whatever the next step is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point of tonight was just to.
Craft the policy, and that's what we did, and that's a big job.
Right. And
I will say.
My gosh, look at all we accomplished.
Right.
We accomplished all this in 2.5 hours.
I know.
That's pretty amazing considering it's been 100 years.
I agree.
So kudos to everybody, including Mr. Wendell and Mrs. Parsons.
Yes. So are we good to go?
Yeah, I think we're good. Are we good with vision and goal? Are you good, Ann? You're the one that you had a final question. Are you good?
Well, I guess it depends on how you're defining good.
Are we okay to move on to vision?
I don't feel good in terms of the great amount of misinformation that's been spread about our board and things that I said. No, I don't feel good about that at all.
Yeah, I mean.
Are we good with our current?
That the policy discussion
for the next work session, we're good with all that?
I feel very comfortable with that direction. Thank you for volunteering to do all that work, Simon.
That's fine. My pleasure.
Are we okay to move on to item B? Ann, are you okay to move on? Do you have any final tie-up? Okay. Item B, vision and goal discussion, strategic planning. Obviously, it's not going to be as long as originally planned, but if we could at least kind of start into it, right? And then have a follow-up. Sorry, I have all my vision and goal stuff in my briefcase still, so I'm just pulling it out.
Okay. We can.
So go ahead, Mr. Stefanovic.
Okay, we can do that. Dave, do you have what you got on the laptop? For the vision and strategic plan review, as everyone knows, there is a strategic plan for the school district. The process was undertaken starting back in January of 2018. And in this room, Ms. Dunaway, Ms. Heatherly, and Ms. Dahl were involved in different pieces, of that process. Included with the strategic plan, there is a vision statement and a mission statement. But in looking at the strategic plan, I found myself also reviewing and reanalyzing the information that was provided during the superintendent search process.
You were going to say that.
By K-12 and associates. Now, not all of the questions or categories were the same, but there's some interesting pieces of the data that was provided, to the candidates during the superintendent process. There were 10 categories that were out there, and I'll put one of them aside because it's not really school-based. It's just kind of like the person was a superintendent before. That's not really, technology, curriculum instruction, anything like that. And then there were other classification pieces. But we were presented with a top 5 of those 10 items and a bottom 5. But the interesting thing when you analyze the responses by group, there were 6 different groups. There was a Board of Education group, there was an administration group, there was a certified staff or teacher group, there was a support staff group, there was a parent and community group, and then there was a student group. So you had 6 groups. There were really only three categories where those 6 groups agreed that item was either in the top 5 or the bottom 5. Now up here, I have 4 because the 4th one, which is what we're talking about today, when you average the 6 groups together, it comes up with an average of less than 5. And so it ends up being the 4th item in the top 5 category. But the very, very interesting thing to me is on the very bottom, look what was missing in the top 5.
That doesn't surprise me.
That surprised me, and that actually was listed as 9th. Of the 10, it was listed as 9th, and in that grouping, the student group was the one that rated that the highest of the 6 groups. And the second group was the support staff group. And so that just kind of really surprised me that the parents didn't have curriculum instruction up there, the teachers didn't have curriculum instruction up there, the board didn't have curriculum instruction in the top 5. And so that was very interesting to me because as superintendencies and principalships have transitioned over the last 15 to 20 years, it's not necessarily about just being a manager anymore. It's about being an instructional leader and knowing how to put all the pieces together to provide the students with a pre-K to 12 quality education. And so, I thought that was a significant aha moment, in that. All right, Dave, you can click to the next one. And there's the categories. The groups agreed on 3 areas that needed to be in the top 5. They agreed on 2 areas that needed to be in the bottom 5. And again, the sad part about that was they agreed that curriculum and instruction needed to be in the bottom 5. The students, even though they had the highest number, their number was still only 7. And so it wasn't a super, super high number. And then the mixed results, 5, half of the categories. Some of the groups thought that they were top 5 categories. Some of the groups thought that they were bottom 5 categories. Another thing that I thought was significant when you're looking at everybody being on the same page and rowing the boat, if you will, in the same direction. So there are 5 areas that somebody could think it was the number 1 priority, and another grouping of the educational community could think it was 6, 7, or 8 on the category. That's significant to me that people have that big of differences in these characteristics. So now we roll forward to the strategic plan, the vision, and the mission that was discussed back in 2018, January of 18. So we're getting ready to be 3 years in January of 21. And the question is that vision, is that mission, is that strategic plan still relevant? And with that kind of diversity, again, when people talk about diversity, a lot of times they're going to racial, ethnic, that kind of diversity. But think about diversity of thought. Think about diversity of philosophy. Think about diversity of opinion. And when 5 of the 10 categories that were in that data survey for candidates coming into the district, in that process, you might not have a chance to do all the analyzing of the data. But when you're outside of that process and you look at it, there's more information that needs to be gathered to find out what are the values, what are the expectations of a school district in Tipp City.
Is it possible that the result of the survey is more indicative that it was, because this is a survey that was provided for the superintendent search, correct?
Sure. Yeah.
So if you provide the same people what's important for the school district to focus on, in other words, the respondents could have felt that academically our curriculum and things like that are pretty solid.
Right.
Where we have an urgent need at this point is on these other things. And so if we're going to go forward to kind of look at what might want to do another survey that focuses on the school district as a whole versus the search.
You must have read my slides.
Well, Dave secretively sent them, don't joking.
Send them out to people.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Dave, you weren't supposed to do that.
Actually, to actually expedite the process if you want, I mean, I was
Sorry.
going to ask the board, no, you're fine. I was going to ask the board, do you know what the vision of the school district is? Can you recite it? Now, some people who have reference folders, they can.
No, I didn't bring this with me. I didn't bring that.
They could, they could look at it, but even here, you've got, and again, there might be people out there that know this inside and out.
It's
they're-
very wordy.
And they're living
very
it
long.
every day. Well, some of it, some people could take phrases out of that and they could actually define them in different ways. And so not being critical of anybody in any process, just saying that, just like Simon said, I think it's time to gather more data,
Totally.
find out what people believe the vision should be, what people believe the mission should be, and what people believe are the priorities for the strategic plan. So if you want, Dave, you can click to the last slide, and cut to the chase. I've got the mission. I have the pillars. And I know which pillar everybody was part of, in the research. But what I'd like to do, and again, not to freak anybody out. Oh my God, they're doing strategic planning again. Not necessarily. It's to put,
It's a tweaking.
right, it's to
We
put
always
information out there
It's a living
to,
document.
that's what I'm saying.
Living
It
document.
doesn't appear from talking to people in the district that
No
were
one's gonna
involved
get
in the
offended.
process that the document currently is a living document. Like committees and work groups had a stopping point. Some individuals took pieces of it and they moved it forward. Some pieces didn't move forward. The bond vote created an issue with the facilities committee possibly. And again, have heard from some that we have to make sure that we keep that discussion, in the forefront because our buildings are still what they are. And so we have to look at, what the facilities plan is moving forward. So here's my proposal for vision and strategic plan review for Tipp City. Use January and February as data gathering months. And so whether it's a resurvey, whether it's some focus groups to talk to, if people are more comfortable talking with the superintendent or representatives of the district office about what their thoughts are about, and get all that information together. Then in March and April, maybe repeat pieces of the work group format or the strategic plan steering committee format and see how the results match up with the document that, again, a lot of people feel is not fluid right now, is not a living document. Look at it and see if it can be revised, and then we move forward, in the future. If some things need to be completely overhauled, or if the desires and the expectations of the community have changed in 3 years, then we go in and we make more significant revisions to the strategic plan. And then by May or June, have that to offer to the Board of Education. And July 4th, Independence Day, we have the jumping off, for the next school year and beyond with a newly revised strategic plan, vision, and mission. Because it's definitely evident to me that some folks have some pretty strong belief systems and things that they're passionate about. And I'd like to get more of that picture from the community and all the groups that were actually involved. Those 6 groupings, get the information again, put it all together as data and make a data-based decision about the strategic plan for the future.
Makes sense to me. Question?
Sounds good to me. I'm good. The 3 of us are involved in the original one, so I'm speaking for me.
Right.
Do not worry about hurting people's feelings. COVID changed everything.
Right.
It's been 3 years. And if you go to, a place like Aileron, they will tell you that you should be working on this all the time. Like you said, not everybody recognizes it as a living document. Some people just think, boom, this is it. We're done.
Or took action on it.
Especially with COVID. Now
Right.
that we had COVID, everything has changed. Everything has changed.
Right.
I mean, Corinne, you're an educator. I'm not, so I'm just saying, you do know more than, it's not just a blanket statement.
Right.
It impacts all of this.
Right.
So the only advice I could give you, do not worry about hurting people's feelings. We have to go forward. A lot has changed. Let's just do it. Let's do it right. Take your feelings, check them at the door. We're getting this done. I mean,
Well,
that's just-
and again, the big piece is, and again, the finalized plan, if you will, that's one way of looking at it, and several districts do that. We have a finalized plan. But the living document piece, that means that the May board meeting or the June board meeting, when we say, here's our plan, that's the starting point. That is not the ending point. That actually gives you something, and then quarterly, or at least each semester, you give updates on the progress of the action steps and things that are being accomplished, and then it stays as part of living documents. Then personal goals, building goals, everything lines up to the strategic plan. Then the strategic plan doesn't become another thing that overflows your plate. It's something that everything flows into, and then everything makes sense.
in some board meetings, they actually, they have an agenda item for this.
Right.
In the superintendent and assistant superintendent, it's like a 2 to 3 minute,
Right.
and this is what we did, and this is how it ties. I mean, it's on every single board meeting.
Right, and then it ties into Dave's office.
Exactly.
Because when somebody comes in and says, hey, we
How
got
does
an
that relate to
idea,
our,
we need this many funds in order to make this
Yeah.
happen.
how does that tie into?
Then
our
you said, how does it tie into the strategic plan? How does it tie into your building goals? How does it tie in all the way down?
Springfield is the most perfect example of this, Corinne, you know that. I go on their webpage a lot. Ironic that, you work there, but I mean, they just do such an amazing job of everything. How does it tie in? I mean, it's just boom, 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 boom. You just know.
Right. And if you line that up, and again, I had the good fortune of working for a district that, not as a superintendent, but as a principal and as a director, that they started a process. Now they've had their superintendent for, I think, 12 years, and they started a process, and they've been highlighted by school improvement groups in the state of Ohio, because that living document has continued and through time. And so they've actually said, okay, here's where it all started, 12 years ago, and here's where we are today. And you can actually see how it all is sequential.
That's how you pass levies. That's how you build new facilities. It all starts here.
Right.
And this is, this is the framework for everything else that's going to come. So this is super important work.
Right.
Super important work.
All right. Well, with your blessing, we'll ramp things up.
I'm
during
excited.
The holiday break, and we'll hit the ground running in January.
Super excited.
It's not a criticism of this district. I think this is a pitfall for all strategic plans, is that in that May and June timeframe will be your guidance for the whole district on how to measure. I heard you say earlier, like some people had moved ahead and some people haven't, because maybe they didn't know the direction or what the expectation was. And I think that is a critical element that sometimes there's so much work in devising the strategic plan, but we don't say how it's going to be implemented.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that's really our role. I think that's more of your role.
Sure.
To make sure that that trickles down to all the people who understand how their work contributes to moving this forward.
And there are some definite outcomes from the strategic plan work. But when you look at the bottom and things that you were going to check into as as outcome statements or benchmarks or whatever. Not all of them, were accomplished, but there were significant things that did happen. And again, COVID, and I think the bond situation was deflating, for at least the facilities pillar. And again, then COVID hit. And so finding out information and moving forward with that, it impacted a lot of areas.
Andy, you had something to say?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Was that the end of your presentation?
That was the last slide. Yeah.
Okay,
I had
all
some
right.
other fun in the middle there, but
Okay.
it'd take too long for the meeting.
All right. So that takes us to policy updates, first read. Is that Mr. Stefanovic or is that Dave?
There's some policies for both of us, but we have a packet, and it's the traditional twice a year revision from Neola. When you look through the changes are just alignment changes to some new statutes or some revisions to some statutes. There was a concern raised with me that there was one policy that was completely redlined, and that was a policy that was rolled into the Title IX upgrade, where the board has approved a new policy that might be a record for numbers of pages in a policy, because I think it had 30 some pages when it was all said and done. And that was just a policy that wasn't even like administrative guidelines or any follow-up documents. And so that particular policy was like a restatement of the things that were in the new Title IX policy. And that's why there was an extreme revision and elimination of that policy. But the rest of them, a paragraph here, a sentence there, a word there, and it aligns everything. One example would be in all the evaluation policies, since there's no value-added information for evaluations this year, they had to revise the policies and say things like no value-added, in the OTES and OPES policies for the school year. So a lot of alignment things, but not a lot of significant changes to most of the policies.
Okay, so that takes us to upcoming meetings. The next regular board meeting will take place at 6 p.m. on Monday, December 14th, 2020 at the Board of Education office. Does anybody else have anything to add before I ask for an adjournment? Nobody? Okay. Okay, so I would like to get a motion to adjourn.
I motion.
Second.
Motion and seconded by Mrs. Dowell and Mrs. Zakor. Dave, call for roll.
Dahl,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dunaway.
Yes, I said roll. I meant vote. I said call for roll. I meant vote.
And I did it completely out of order, so.
Don't worry, because I said roll and I think that confused you. I meant to say call for a vote.
Okay, meeting
Okay, meeting adjourned.
8:48.
Meeting adjourned, Darrell. Sorry to